Yeah, to sign sheet, to sign it.
Not the
She
central.
stayed?
Yeah.
Sam? Oh, that's her. All right, you signed it anyhow. and-
Right.
North with Sam. Is Sam staying?
I couldn't believe
Nita
that.
shows us
You're
stories.
on
I
camera.
was shocked when I
Okay.
heard it last night.
Who's
I have it on my,
From,
I have it on my,
I was shocked.
I'm Shakita Anita, and come to see the bylaws and the beat in.
Okay, everybody, we're gonna start. Are you taking her away? Okay, all right.
I didn't know that was the last one.
Let's convene the meeting, please. Everybody, please. Well, Joy will come back in. Has everybody signed? Okay. So we have it on record, thank you.
That hurt me though,
There you go.
because my deal, never put it in, so now I have to renegotiate.
Okay, let's start, please. Okay, thank you, and it's a long time no see for some of us in this room who were at nominations yesterday.
Yes,
So, what I have first of all is from Bobby, which is the volunteer luncheon sign up. And if you didn't, sign up yesterday and want to,
Or at another meeting,
excuse me,
or at another meeting.
or at another meeting, does anybody want it now?
I'll sign in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right, you
I have
mentioned
it
you
on my desk, but I'll do it right now.
I remember
You're an
you said you were.
automatic as the vice president.
I know, but I
Jackie?
wanna do it the right way like everybody.
Can I have two or
I don't wanna
three
be
for,
different.
Sure,
no, three is enough for mine.
I'll give you an extra.
My
I believe I
building.
signed up at security.
I signed up at the recorder.
There you
I
go.
signed
It's a
up.
volunteer luncheon.
What is that?
Anybody else? has-
And now you have to sign up, but if you were not.
No, you don't have
not
to,
at
no.
the, uh,
February
meeting,
25th.
Okay, let's get started, please.
Okay.
Everyone, please, we're starting the meeting.
February 25th.
It's on the paper, okay. So let's start, we'll start with the minutes of the December 12 meeting. And I'll read them in my scratchy voice. Okay, the chair convened the meeting at 10. Minutes from the November 14 meeting were read and approved. The following edits to UCO bylaws were approved by the committee. Page 14, Article 6, Executive Board. Any member of the executive board who is absent from 4 or more meetings in any one calendar year without notification of cause to the UCO president or recording secretary shall be subject to removal from the board by majority vote of the board, okay? Page 30, committees. And this is about the search committee, let me see, take a look at number 1, section 1B1. The only thing changed was this. Only unit owners may nominate candidates and second nominations. A unit owner may nominate or second multiple candidates from multiple offices according to the guidelines set by the search committee meeting.
Now, yesterday we said delegates, did we not? Only a delegate could
Well,
nominate?
that's how it is now.
That's how it is
That's
now,
how it is
but
now.
this
This
is
is the
changing.
bylaw.
Oh, this is for,
In the future.
I have to think.
So anybody who wasn't here when that
Right,
happened,
okay,
instead of just being delegates nominating and seconding, in the future, we would allow unit owners, give them that right.
right.
And in terms of the guidelines set by the search nominations committee, yesterday, for example, we said that people can nominate as many people as they want, one at a time. They'll have to go up and nominate and go to the back of the line and nominate again to avoid the crush at the microphones. But we also agreed that we didn't want to stop people from making multiple nominations if they wanted to, but we just wanted to make it run more smoothly. So that was that. I think that's it. Nominated candidates must submit their biographies to the search nominations committee over the weekend following nominations from the floor so that all candidate biographies may be published in a UCO Reporter prior to the election in March. Everybody okay? All right, the committee discussed at length strategies to encourage more delegates to attend meetings. Bobby Levin offered to develop and send VPS information on associations that do not have participating delegates. David Israel was asked to have VPs address the issue in their quadrant meetings. Jackie suggested that job descriptions be developed for YUCO officers, especially to include computer literacy, this to be discussed at a future date. You will note that on the flyer that I did for nominations for running for election, I added computer skills important under the criteria for eligibility. Okay. Anita will send David for forwarding to Rod Tennyson the revised bylaws draft and the list of the 8 open petitions submitted with signatures and vetted.
And the way we send stuff to the lawyer like this, unless we want to be charged a lot of money, because he isn't gonna sit there with the old copy on the left and the new on the right. There's a coding system. Anyone who's worked in a legal office knows there's a coding system. Strike through, text to be removed. Parenthesis, text not to be changed. Underline, new text, not color coded. This is the way the lawyer wants this data. And I'm not sure what I have is coded that way.
It's coded in every way except the color.
Yeah, it is coded, your copy
Yeah,
that we
they're
have
underlined,
is
It's
all
all
coded.
and
underlined.
struck through.
Treat it as black, if it's blue, treat it as black.
Well, we can change it.
If you
that.
can.
But it's all,
Just so it has these other arcane legal codes,
It does.
it should be
I
fine.
guess he didn't, so you haven't sent it yet,
No,
okay.
oh,
are we
Okay.
done changing it?
well, after
For the
today,
moment?
maybe not.
Well,
For
you
the
know, it's
moment, it
always
looks
for the
like-
moment.
At the moment, but we have a few additions as of today.
Well, we may have more as of today, I guess it'll just prolong it more, I mean, how long do we keep adding things before we send it to him
You
is the
have to
question.
start once you
I
send
think-
it.
All right.
I think
Yeah,
today
I
should be
thought there
Yeah,
was
let's
a
hold on.
cutoff.
What we had said was that once we got through the petitions that came in, we had a cutoff date and said, once we're through with those,
Yeah.
we will send them to the attorney.
It's separate, right?
Together you was-
No, what we said was,
New stuff is separate. We made a whole bunch of changes to the bylaws.
Yeah,
This is what I was talking to you about. Not to sneak in stuff that in fact has been rejected in the past and try to get it passed as a bulk package because nobody's looking. And
Well, we-
I,
no.
for example, specifically said term limits, but there are other little things. Just make sure they haven't been pushed in there, that haven't been voted on, or worse yet, have been voted down in the past.
Well,
Alright, you know what I'm saying?
yes, I do, I mean, I thought that we accommodated that.
Alright,
There's nothing in there
Oh, fine.
now, I wanna be sure though that we're clear. The petitions that came in, one vote, one unit, for example, electronic signatures, electronic voting, the bid committee becoming a full standing committee, those were all accepted by this committee as their own to be
Alright.
included, and we
But
did
these
that.
are
all I'm saying is you cannot go to the delegates and throw a document at them with a dozen changes or more, because they're not going to study the document.
What are you saying? I
These
understand.
changes normally come one or two at a time,
I understand.
alright?
Right,
These,
You gotta be careful.
these
I
8
know.
we're looking at in front of us, which we did not approve, right? But they were
Right.
vetted and they're gonna go to the lawyer for wording. They can be presented to officers, executive board and that.
Sure.
But what David's saying, don't put it as a package of all 8, do it individually. In other words, you vote on 1, you vote on 2, you vote on 3. Because if
Right.
I wanna vote on 1, but I don't wanna vote on 2,
Exactly.
so they have to be
Absolutely.
handed as individual
Yeah.
as delegate, that's what he's
Right.
saying.
right, first they have to go to officers,
Mhm.
then they have to go to
Executive
executive board and then delegates, I didn't mean to be pointing at you.
Right,
I'm poking holes in you,
alright.
yes,
So I'm gonna assume that what you sent me, that's it as a
Now,
point in time.
right now.
Yeah,
But
Right,
it sounds like you're ready to make some more changes today.
Yeah, two of them.
I don't know, we may, let me raise one more issue. The 8 that we have today do not appear in the bylaw draft. All the other ones that we talked about and agreed do, so these 8 do not. But we were going to send them, I thought we agreed last time to send them to Rod just to see if they were even doable.
Or, yeah,
Right,
just so that they're legal. That's all he's
right,
gonna do.
legal, that's all.
He's gonna tell you if it's in violation of state law. or
Yes,
whatever.
exactly. Let me just say.
Can I just make one
Sorry,
comment?
sorry.
I just hope that, when it's presented to the delegates, it's not given out the day of the meeting. Maybe some kind of, procedure with it, delegates can pick up, I don't know if all of them will, but pick up, the new bylaws at this office, because how can you, historically, they've had to vote on things the same day and it's not fair.
They should have a month to look at this stuff.
Yes,
I
Yes.
was also going to make a suggestion that we have workshops. That we have actual workshops, that we invite the different quadrants to come in and we can go over the bylaws with them, they can go back to their boards and their buildings and explain it to them.
well,
And
that's
the more-
awesome,
The more
right,
information they have,
right,
the
that's a good idea.
less questions and the less
Right.
doubts you'll have. I
Right.
think that the workshops are very important, you have the coffee hours, we can have the workshop come, they can come in and we'll have members of the committee here to go over it with them, not particularly the officers, but members of this committee that would be able to explain it to them, so that it's not gonna be something like what Jackie says, that they're gonna get at the last minute to look at, that they
No, it's
understand
not
what
gonna
they
happen.
have in the package.
We're gonna talk about that procedure today, but thank you, that's a great idea. I had also said we could do town halls if we wanted to, I think this is better because it's smaller groups.
Yeah.
The other thing is, we're not gonna present these, I thought we agreed, to the delegates as a whole package. I thought we were gonna do maybe
Individual.
3 articles at a time, or do we have to,
That's
is
what
that
we
what you're
said.
saying?
I think you should do each one separate, I don't care how you
Yeah.
present it,
But
But they
when,
should get the whole
but
packet.
individual, vote on number 1, vote on number 2.
Right.
You shouldn't have to
But
vote on
not at one meeting, are you saying?
Oh, well, no, I don't know, it
I don't know about that,
depends,
but-
that I don't know.
But I
Yeah,
think
we're
they
gonna
should
vote on
be
each
presented the whole packet though.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, you have to, right,
Yeah.
Jackie?
You know,
Herb,
I just wanted to say that having people come and find out what all this is about and then go back to their buildings, well, I find that a lot of buildings,
They don't go back.
this information just doesn't get there. Also, it behooves the people who live in the buildings because they are supposed to talk to the delegates and tell them what they choose to do. In other words, I'm the vice president of my building and I'm the delegate. I go around and I actually try to find out the consensus of what people in the building, how they want us to vote. Now, most people don't. What we do in building A, we do it because one, takes some of the load off my back because you all told me what you want and I'm gonna vote your way. It's not me. So
Right.
I represent what you, the resident, want. And I think that's the key to the basis is to get the residents involved in this. We have to be able to get out and say to them, look, we're gonna have a meeting, residents come because this is really important. And you'll get all the information that your delegates should have, but you'll have to tell them what you think,
now,
pro or con.
sure, thank you, that's good point, Stuart.
In the real world, you're absolutely right. In the world in which we
It's
live
not gonna
here,
happen.
I know, I'm not saying that what you're doing should stop because you know it's not gonna go anyplace. But your conscience is clear that you did the right
Yes.
thing.
Exactly.
The idea is if we're going to have meetings, small meetings, workshops, we could tell by the number of people showing up how difficult it will be. But that does not mean that what we do should be we'd be deterred. We
Right,
just
do the
have to
right
move
thing.
on
Right.
and say, if you didn't read it, you know, I don't wanna be political, but someone once said, sign it and you read it later. We don't really want that, but that's what's going to happen
Well,
somewhere along the line,
Yeah.
sadly.
That's,
But you're totally correct, I mean, there is a real world, I mean, when we have a finance meeting and it's the finances and only 6 people show up, you look around and you say, think of how many people live in here and how many people actually participate.
yeah,
The numbers are very, very
very
small,
small, I know.
but
So, yeah,
at
go ahead.
least try to reach out.
Absolutely, you're right.
Just
Both
like
of
we
you
do
are
with
right.
We do it with our general meetings once a year. Do you get everybody in your building?
No, no.
We're lucky if we have a quorum.
Actually, I do, yeah, yes,
So-
that's all we get. Let me raise this just so I'm clear. Can we invite the residents to the quadrant meetings?
Why not?
Okay, and now would that be, could that be, well, I hope that would get big. So where would we have these?
Wait a minute, normally, in the past, when some of the VPs were a bit more active, they would have quadrant meetings in the association spaces. There might be a little grassy spot or somewhere, used to go out. Sal Bumolo used to do it all the time. He went out and he talked to the people on their ground. If you're talking having quadrant meetings in here, I mean, you can get quite a turnout if you advertise them properly.
So should they be done at the clubhouse
They
maybe?
could be, sure,
Okay.
sure they could.
Are you suggesting that we go to every association?
I'm saying that each
Well, we could ask,
VP,
people could invite us to go.
each VP has a number of buildings assigned to them. They're so-called quadrant,
Right,
right? And it's with those building boards and residents that VP should on occasion have a meeting,
right.
right? Raise your concerns.
Yeah.
Right? Now, how many people are gonna show up? This village has changed since then. Alright?
Yeah.
Um,
And I think too,
We'll give them a cup of coffee and a donut.
Yeah.
We'll have a good time.
right, it's the
Okay.
answer to everything.
That's something you can do in the clubhouse very
Sure.
easily.
Sure.
Okay, you're saying have them in the clubhouse, have the meetings, yeah.
We can have them in one of the classrooms, or you can even have them in the recorder office, we have plenty of room up there.
Okay, yes, Marilyn.
Okay, you have 3 vice presidents right now. What happens with the 4th that is not working? Who is going to look after that one? Which I understand is Wellington, which is a big development.
Just
Yeah,
do
so-
it like you do
We'll do
now.
it now,
Yeah.
like we're doing now.
Just do it now.
I will invite the president, he lives in Wellington.
It will
Oh, no, he
rotate,
doesn't, but close to it.
it will rotate among the other 3 vice presidents.
Right, so I think what we're saying, just so I'm really clear, we're going to make sure we do everything we can to notify people and to explain to people what they're voting on. We're going to have quadrant meetings, we will probably, I guess we can't put these, we can put them in the, at the end, we'll put them in the reporter. I don't know if they'll fit in information forward,
What?
the bylaws,
Too much.
That's a lot.
yeah, too
Yeah.
much. Yeah, okay.
I can send it.
Some at a time.
The MailChimp program is restricted to 10 megabyte.
Yeah.
I might be able to shrink the document, optimize it in Adobe, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
And it'll shrink down. The answer is yes, I can send it to the bulk email block,
Okay, good.
sure.
I don't think that's enough. I think that you have a list of the presidents of in your quadrant, and I think that the VP should call, or somebody from here should call, or in Wellington, I'll call, but I mean, somebody, you need to do more than an email. I know that this is the era of computers and blah, 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 but we need to do more.
Okay, well, we've got a little bit of time before we have to do it, we've got all the ideas now, let's keep adding to them as we go. Our commitment is to get to as many people, as much information on these bylaws with as much time as possible to consider them before they take a vote.
We gotta get this to the lawyer before we think
Well,
about it.
right, and that's gonna, yeah,
Yeah, right, have to go to the lawyer.
and vote on individual articles.
Yeah.
Some of them can be easily combined, but we'll, at this point, when we do the voting, we'll vote by individual articles, so that,
Because they came in individually and signed by people individually, they should be voted on individually.
right,
Yeah,
I
right,
might have signed this one and maybe not signed that one, I didn't sign any, but I'm just saying,
Right.
that
Right.
could be the case, you know?
so, yes, that's a good point.
I don't know exactly what you have in mind for a timeline as to when the new and improved pack of our bylaws will be voted on. But we could put, I'll pick a number, 3 of the changes as part of an article in the paper. Right? You will be asked to vote on and put maybe 3 of them or 4 of them. So people have a chance to chew on them and ask questions in advance, so it won't be a shock when you come to the delegate assembly
We gotta vote.
and you have to vote. To put
Okay.
all 40 pages in the paper at one time, who's gonna read it?
Right.
Nobody.
It's never our intent.
The other thing we could do, and this, I don't know if this could be at a delegate meeting, but we could summarize the changes to alert them for the major changes that are coming.
True.
If we want to do that, that's a little bit selective, I
Oh,
suppose,
you gotta
but,
remember that the paper is a broadsheet, it's not an 8x10. Okay, we run now, you're running off your blog, a 60-page paper, and you're doing that, okay, in one that you do it, so when you're talking 3 or 4 of these, some of these amendments are only 2 or 3 lines.
yeah,
So there's those you can break up, let us worry about that when we get closer to it,
Okay.
then we can get them in.
now, one thing before I forget, and then right to
Do
you,
you
Jackie.
think it's
Go ahead, you go
possible
first. Go
Are
ahead.
we to have this ready before the snowbirds go home?
Well, let's
Again,
walk
we're gonna
through
be
it.
voting on stuff and the
I know.
snowbirds are not gonna
Let's
be.
walk through it for a minute. We have to get these to the lawyer. He has to process them, send back his changes. We have to get them to officers, to executive board, and then after that, that's when all this processing
Right.
goes on. We have to have these quadrant meetings, we have to get them all published. And I was thinking, we may not need it, of a summary meeting at the delegate assembly where we report on the bylaws that are coming and the major changes you should be on alert for, if that helps people, or is that too selective?
I wouldn't do that, I would keep
Okay.
it where they're gonna meet with the presidents and the different quadrants and get
Okay.
this out to them so they can actually read it in hand,
Okay.
people like to read it.
Okay, thank you,
so
that was
when,
a great idea, Joy, yes.
so when do you think we're gonna present this to the,
Well, let's walk through it, let's say the attorney gets back to us in a month.
That's February,
Okay,
We have another month to incorporate his changes.
Lord.
March,
Then we have to go,
the procedure,
Not gonna
The
do it in the middle of the
procedure,
summer.
that's April.
right,
And then you're gonna have the meetings with your quadrants,
right,
They're
be
gone,
May and June,
May and June.
you're talking about
People
the
are
summer.
gone.
they're gone.
Unless you say you're gonna do this at the first meeting, I don't know,
September
but
maybe.
you know, they've
October.
always said here at UCO, and I address the offices, is that work continues.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Village doesn't
Stop.
sleep.
Thank you.
right.
As you know, your paper doesn't.
Yeah. So the issue, so you're saying we
You have to
can,
see where it winds up.
yeah, and see if we can push it. I mean, the lawyer may get back to us sooner unless he finds
something?
really major stuff that's gonna take a lot of,
And we have to be available for meetings here.
Yeah,
we have to be available, yes.
and I was thinking, if the lawyer came back with, you know, 7 of the 8, and one he
Are
has
you
to,
talking about these here?
Yeah, the new ones, yeah.
the new
Yeah.
ones.
The petition.
We can have emergency meetings in between
Of course.
and try to push this thing
Yeah,
forward
right.
so it doesn't go into
Forever.
forever.
Right.
Yeah.
And with the officers and the executive board, we can present each change, but we present multiple ones at a single meeting.
Oh, sure.
So, and maybe we even get to all of them, okay.
Yeah.
David, I have a question for you. Do you want me to go back and change the color print to black and make sure that it,
I don't think that matters
It
as
doesn't.
long as the other
This cross
standardized
out.
coding is in there.
All
It
the
is.
coding's in.
You know what,
Underline,
there is a-
strike through, and ellipses.
you know, the parentheses are not in there. But in the things that he sent us, he did not use them
No.
either. So I don't know how
He just
urgent.
used a cross
Now,
out.
hold on, he's not changing anything. Rod Tennyson is not
It's only
changing our
legal.
No, but he sent us wording for things we requested legal wording for
Yeah.
that we put in here. He used strike through and he used
Underline.
Underline.
yeah,
I would
yeah,
send it to
and
him.
underlining, but did not use the ellipsis.
I would
If you
send
want me
it
to
to
do
him.
it, I'll go
I
back
would-
and put
I
it
would
in.
just send it to him, and Ron's looking just legality, that's all he's looking at, legality, right?
So if he
He
wants,
looks at the construction of the document.
Yeah,
Right.
you have it good.
I mean, this is the way it's been done for as long as,
Yeah,
Ever.
you know,
you have it that way.
You have it
underline
basically,
is
except for
new
the
text,
it
parentheses.
is.
Yeah, he has
Strike
that,
through
she
is
has it that
take
way.
out.
parentheses is unchanged, strike through is thrown out.
Right.
You have to be able to read through and make sure that continuity is right.
This is even in ink if you had to, and give that
Yeah,
up,
you can do it in black ink.
that's no big deal.
Changing color is trivial.
I don't think that's gonna matter the color.
And he's not gonna care really about that.
He's gonna be
And he
colorblind.
can also say, hey, look, I can't look at these unless you change the color or you, whatever.
Not the color,
Huh?
it's the coding, it's standard way.
Everything is there except the parentheses for around the
How do
things
you
that don't
designate
change.
new text?
It's very clear, it's unchanged. It's
No, no,
unchanged.
new text.
Yeah,
New text is underlined.
right.
Yeah.
Anita,
Cross out and
Alright.
underline is
Cross
new
out and
text.
Done.
historically,
Yes,
I
she
don't
did it.
remember using parentheses.
Right.
If it's okay, you just
I
don't
think
touch
this
it.
is fine the way you did it, the
Right,
underline and the
and I
cross
will
out,
say
that's
that in-
doable.
Thank you, and then in the version we got from Marilyn and
Yeah.
Arlen, there were no ellipses and they
no.
had approved. No, Arlen didn't, but Marilyn's changes were done with Mark Friedman. And they were not
It's
in
gonna be okay.
parentheses.
No,
If you want to think about it, tell me I can do it.
if it's
But
not
everything else,
underlined or.
If you look at it,
Look at it, you can look at the page and you see the underline and you see the strikeouts, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
it's
very definite.
it's definite.
and the stuff that isn't changed,
It stays,
clear.
it's old.
Yeah, I don't know
It
what's going on.
remains, I don't know why.
so,
Alright,
let's
Just
see what
send
he
it
says.
to him, send it to him.
Yeah.
I don't
Okay.
And he can come back and tell you, in a second, I won't look at this without parentheses,
I don't,
and we'll
I
change
don't
it.
think he's
I
gonna
don't
do
think
that.
And if
so.
he does, that takes a minute, and if it doesn't matter to him, he hasn't been stopped.
I'm just looking at this, we have parentheses for other things, for instance, 25 spelled out in parentheses 25.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty clear. Well, let's leave it to the attorney, and you can come back, and please don't wait if you get an answer. Send it to me and I'll get it to the committee, and it said, nope, you gotta do the parentheses or we won't look at it. We'll do it in a day if we have to.
Right.
Okay, so
You'll
that's
have a
fine.
whole document of parentheses.
I know, the whole thing will be, I
Well,
know.
let's continue on.
Yeah,
Shall
come on.
shall we move on?
Move on.
Thank you.
Good idea.
Let's away.
And now I have to beg your
Indulgence.
assistance and your indulgence here. Do you remember taking an official vote to approve the draft version of the bylaws?
No, I don't remember.
I don't.
No,
Nobody, I don't.
I
Yeah.
don't remember.
So we're gonna take it now just to have it on the
Yeah,
record.
okay.
How many vote in favor of moving the draft, of approving the draft bylaws as we exist?
Are you having a
Hold on.
discussion?
Of course,
you're not gonna ask delegates at question 2, are you?
of course not.
Asking them
No.
to approve this thing
No,
in
no.
bulk?
No, that's for us.
That's
I'm
us.
only
This
doing
is
it,
just for the committee.
I'm only doing it for us because we've lived it
Yes.
all the way
I got
through, and we've reviewed it and gone back and reviewed it many times. Do we have, are we comfortable, go ahead, discussion?
I'm comfortable with it, but I really think you should take a roll call vote.
Yes, I have the, yes,
Okay,
Right,
a
that's
motion,
true.
a motion to accept.
yes,
Yeah.
to officially approve
As of this date.
Yeah,
Correct.
as of today,
Right.
which is the
January 9th.
9th.
And then
Are you
Ni- then
adding
need a
anything
second
to
though.
this?
No,
No.
no.
What I sent you an email, and what you have right here
Is it?
is as of December 28th.
Yeah.
Okay,
But you didn't take a vote.
No, we never took a vote.
okay, so
to my
today is 1:09:18, and the subject is official approval
But she needs a
of
second.
bylaw draft.
People asked me to bring it up.
Do you wanna comment now?
No, that would be.
Alright, let's take a
Don't you need a
vote.
second?
David Israel.
Yes.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah, right.
thank you.
I'll second it.
Second.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, doing the minutes and the thing, okay.
you should have somebody taking minutes.
I know, but we didn't have anybody who wanted to. So David Boaz makes the motion. Go ahead, David, what is it?
Motion to accept the draft as
Accept.
presented, as per dated,
Draft as what?
as per dated.
As per dated.
Not yet.
David Israel, yes.
Yes.
Ed Black is not here. Joy Vestal,
Yes,
Stuart Richland,
Yes.
Bob Marshall is not here. Bobby Levin,
Yes,
Barbara Cornish.
I have a question, that's why I wanted to question.
Oh, go ahead.
The question was, if Joy is going to try to make a change to this,
How was she say that?
why would we vote on it? Are you making a change
No,
in
she
the
never
bylaws?
said that.
no.
I didn't
Oh,
say
okay,
that.
that's all I'm
I
asking.
didn't
If it's
even
new,
say that.
and if we're gonna discuss it,
Yeah.
we'll add it later,
Okay, that's what I wanna know.
I think I just wanna get these to the lawyer.
Right.
And it'll be like the 8 we already sent him, just for legal language, we can send this too.
Okay, that's what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
okay.
Okay,
You're up.
yes, yes.
You're up.
Barbara,
Yes,
Jackie,
Yes.
Herb,
Yes.
David Boaz,
Yes.
Ruth Dries, because
Yes.
I always pronounce it wrong,
Oh, you're
yes.
right now, yes.
George Patel.
Yes.
David Sachs is not here.
Marilyn.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that's quorum.
Jackie, you
Is there a
second the
problem?
motion?
I got Bobby,
I'll
right?
second it.
Yes.
Oh, you.
I'll second the motion.
We all do.
We all do.
Okay.
Whatever, who put
Well,
any,
let's have an
put
official
any name.
second.
What a Jackie.
All right,
All right.
Jackie,
Okay.
Whatever.
it passes. Now, what we're gonna do is listen to the new things coming in, and we can pass them to the lawyer if we
God,
feel we
remember-
want to.
Finish. Never said.
I know, see, that's why at some point this had to stop,
I-
we could
I-
keep getting more.
It should have
this is-
stopped before you took this vote, is what I'm trying to tell you, but you wanted to vote on this.
And
If she
send
had
it.
something to add, it should have been done before you
Yes,
took this vote
That's true.
and had it added into it. That's the proper way to do it.
Go ahead.
I'm not adding something.
She's not adding.
I'm bringing up a separate matter that is to the attention of the advisory.
Has to be voted on.
So we can, we're
Yeah,
not doing the
that's
same
fine.
thing, so we're not.
Okay.
Well, let's have a
Let's do it
discussion,
that way.
if we need a reconsideration,
Mhm.
let's do
We'll
a
just do it
reconsideration.
louder.
I can't hear. Can you hear? I
She,
mean, I
what
can't
she,
hear.
what she said is she's bringing up an issue.
Yeah, that I heard, but what
It's
she
not
said was
necessarily an
the issue.
amendment.
She didn't bring it up yet.
Why
Okay.
don't we let her do it then?
So let's do
Okay.
that.
I'm acting on behalf of Lenore Belcoff, who was at our delegate meeting the other day, and she brought up a proposal for an amendment to, for the replacement of a vice president or someone, the officer, who is incapable of performing their duties. And we were told at that meeting that, this would be brought up to the advisory committee and it would be fast moved over to the attorney. I'd like to bring it up now for discussion. Do we have a copy of the amendment? I thought that she turned that amendment over at the meeting to someone.
She did?
Did she?
No.
Yeah,
I
she
didn't
did.
think so.
No, she said she was going to come
Yeah,
here.
she
and-
said, we said the meeting was today.
I think she gave it to John, yes, he took minutes,
Yeah,
right?
that's right, he was
Well,
the
we need to get it from John,
I
where is
didn't
it,
see
right?
John do it.
Well,
I know what she said, but no petition has come into this committee.
It
Bring it up again.
Yes,
yeah, so I.
It was in essence
Mhm.
a way to get around and deal with an officer who is incapacitated. I believe Lenore said for 3 months.
Right, she did say
And that
that.
the appointment be made by the executive board, if it's voted on, that the
Wow.
appointment be made by the executive board.
There's already language in our bylaws.
There is.
And I have the pages if
The point
you wanna
is,
look at it.
once he's or she is deemed out of office because of the 3-month illness, which we hope to change, there is now an open slot. And there's very specific process for dealing with an open
Yeah.
slot.
Yeah.
The officers select a willing candidate,
Mhm.
which is subject to ratification by the delegate assembly.
Okay, but
It's as simple as that.
I don't even have my bylaws in my desk, but I
I
have
have
the
them.
bylaws saying that was 6 months before their term of office was up. Before that, there was nothing to, for them to have.
If it's less than 3 months, you don't have to
Yeah,
Right.
that's
fill
what
the
the
slot.
bylaw says.
Let's look
Bob
at,
Marshall,
Yeah.
and that's really what we're talking about
Yeah.
now,
He's got a
has a
year.
year to run.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And he's already.
So that has to be dealt with. And
Well, that's what
what
she-
I said is, if we get a final chunk of language, I'm willing to fast track it. But just move it along, it can be done in a month.
Alright, well, it's my understanding that she turned over the amendment to our corresponding secretary.
She
So,
has.
yeah, he should have, whether he's here or not, I think that
It's
we
right
should,
behind him.
I think most of us remember what she proposed at the meeting.
I
And then
do.
we send it on to Rod for an opinion, because every month that we add on is another month.
Can we see the language?
Can we hold on a minute? Can we hold on just 1 second?
Yeah.
Let's look at what's in the bylaws now.
Yeah.
Page 18,
Right.
this is about officers. And then there's, oh my goodness, okay.
This isn't gonna solve our problem. You can't make these things retroactive.
Right.
You have to start the clock from when the thing passes.
That's right, that's when it has to go.
This-
That's right, that's why
We
she wants.
She's
need,
doing it for the future.
Yeah.
we need a letter of resignation. And it's as simple as that. And then we will make the appointment and take it to the delegates.
I don't think, not of what I've heard, he can write a letter of resignation. So
Someone
that,
else can write the letter, all he has to do is sign it.
He came home
Yes,
yesterday.
but
Yeah.
Did you know that?
the point being that he may not be, or he or she may not be capable of signing it.
Right.
So then what do? Then we run for 2 years without another vice president. I don't think it's fair to the residents of this village. I'm not talking about the officers
I agree.
themselves.
I agree.
Because I think if there was an
I
extra
agree
day
too.
in the week, we'd fill it up
That's
right
what
now.
Lenore's amendment is about,
Right,
Exactly.
to fix that.
I mean, they may not be capable mentally,
right.
not only physically, but mentally, of understanding what their responsibility is and that,
All right, right, let's not play doctor.
no,
Let's
I'm
just,
not trying
let's
to
just
play.
place it
Mhm.
in terms of time unavailable to do his duties.
Right, Herb, I have my hand up.
I don't, go ahead.
Yes,
David, not these documents, these are not approved documents that we're looking at,
That's
Jen.
right.
The old documents,
That's
the
right,
ones
the
that
old
we have
bylaws.
on record now.
Right.
well,
In there, it states the president can make an office or a title to anybody. It's up to the president. Now, I have said this to you, that you could have said, George, you can be interim vice president. If Bob comes back, you're out, just to help the people
Right.
to take his place. But that's the way it can be done, according to the old rules, not the new ones, the old ones.
Proposed,
The old-
proposed one.
the old
Look where it says
rules,
about the
let me just
president.
make a correction.
No.
The old rules are in here, they are either struck through
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
or
that's-
maintained.
Okay.
So we're not sending delegates a new draft
No,
that does not include, the old draft is in here.
Okay.
David and then David.
They're not the old rules, they're the current rules.
Current,
Thank
right,
you.
These are the new, this draft is the proposed.
Yes.
right, it's
So
the
we can't say
current,
the
you're
old
right,
ones,
current.
it's the current bylaws.
The current bylaws are in this document, yes.
so then where is it? Does anybody know where it is?
If you read on page 18 in
I know.
in the C, at the bottom of the page,
Yes,
it says term. The officers of this association shall be elected to 2-year terms
it's not
unless
association.
an officer shall sooner resign or shall be removed or is otherwise disqualified to serve. The 4 vice presidents shall serve two-year staggered terms. So,
A removal, E, I think.
right, or shall be removed, or is otherwise disqualified to serve. But what does disqualified to serve mean? If you've been absent from your office for 6 months? You know, that, and this is
You would
nothing
think-
to, and let me say that, Lenore did not intend this, I don't intend this to be
Nobody
anything but
did,
personal. This has
Oh, of
nothing to do
course.
with the personal
Oh,
at all.
we don't doubt that, I
No.
think it's a good, it's a
Absolutely.
very good change that we need to make.
Right,
What's interesting is that it's under executive board that it's far more specific
that's right.
about how you appoint.
And
A
it's
new
not
one.
here.
And it's not under officers, it was never under officers. I don't know if you wanna consider looking at that, but yeah, I've got a comment over here.
Yes, you can make sub-officers. I don't think it includes the president and the 4 VPs. Now, the term interim vice president is interesting, and I'm going to specifically run that by Rod
That's a good idea.
and lay out the current situation. And then we could proceed without a letter of resignation. It's not smart.
That's it.
That's
It's
the
not
best
smart.
way, this way you're not hurting anybody
Right.
either.
That's a thrust of what she's trying to accomplish here, because she's representing, she's the, what do you call it, for the Wellington Association.
Umbrella.
Area
So she
president.
carries a lot of responsibility for her buildings and a number
But the
of residents.
language has to be right. It has to include
Right.
for the unexpired term of the officer
Right.
that
Right.
he or she is interim
Right.
for. So I have yet to see the language in writing,
Uh-huh,
Right.
right?
okay,
What she read needs some
right, well, she
work.
David, she recognized that, that's why she asked me, she's sick today, so she asked me to come to speak in her place, and I was happy to do
Just
that.
And we can write, let me make one comment then, Herb.
Right.
Go ahead.
But
If
what
you-
I'm, all I'm saying is that if we can get this through to Rod, and that if we fast track it, that it doesn't go on as
A month.
any longer than it possibly should, because again, Lenore is representing the Wellington Federation. There's a lot of residents there, he was the vice president at this point, this
560.
particular vice president represented that group. And this is why it's her concern to do so, not her personally, she's acting in her responsibility.
Okay,
Okay?
good point.
That's it.
I think we know the language which we
Yeah.
could put together and send to Rod. But I'd like you to just look at page 13, the bylaws, in the bylaw document that you have in front of you.
The current bylaws.
Yeah.
It is current bylaws. And I think you ought to look at it because we changed it significantly and both those things are here. Let me tell you what the current bylaws say.
Yeah.
Page 13, term and under number 3.
Correct.
I'm gonna read both what's current and then we can talk about what we put in. Any vacancy which occurs during the first year of the 2-year term due to resignation, removal from office or death shall be filled, said vacancy shall be filled at the next election for the unexpired term of the seat being filled,
This is the old one.
the old one. The candidates receiving the next highest number of votes and
That's executive board.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying, that's the only place where there's language about timing. Or how it gets filled, there's none under officers.
You have to, you can't use that wording
No.
for an officer, it would
Right.
have to be changed, because this is not the way to do it.
Right,
And because, let's say you have, I'm just saying offices, and you got 4 people running for vice president. 2 get in, right? The third one only gets 20 votes. Well, guess what? You're not gonna put them in as the vice president in Bob's place, that would be ridiculous. Cause they really weren't, they only ran in that position, they don't deserve to be a vice president by the votes they got. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I don't think it was
But
intended
then that's what
to-
the executive board says, we
Executive.
shouldn't follow that
That's
example.
That's right.
That's why she suggested in her statement the other day that the executive board make the appointment.
Well, I don't see
I
that
just
either.
got-
No, nothing.
Should go this
hold on, I have 2 comments
Yeah, the
over here,
procedure.
Herb.
I got a question to ask. David, Bob has been out for a long time.
Yeah.
Has anybody approached him within the time span that has gone to ask him if he would relinquish or if he would temporarily relinquish it? Did anybody go to him and tell him, we have a terrible problem here in Century Village?
I believe Ed Black did exactly that.
And
I believe he did.
I don't think so.
What I'm
I
not
don't think
certain
so.
about
He
was,
wouldn't
did
say
he
no.
discuss it with Ed, Bob or Molly?
Molly,
I don't think
Molly.
he discussed it
He's
with
here.
Bob.
Why don't-
With
why don't we
Molly.
ask him?
Yeah.
Call him in.
Ed's here, why don't we ask him?
Do you want me to get Ed?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
mind?
in the lobby.
Yeah.
It's a
And
good
they,
question. This guy is not in good shape.
No.
I really, and he's a very,
I don't know why this wasn't
and
done
he's a
earlier.
very nice man, and he's
He's
done a
very
great
positive
thing for
guy.
this village for
Yes, sir,
years,
that's well.
Right.
but that has
Nothing
nothing
to
to
do
do
with
with the problem that exists.
But it's the old story, David, you've said it many times, this is a village that doesn't sleep.
That's right.
And we have 4 officers according to our government, the way it's run. If one of them is not capable, it's the same thing with the president. Out.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
This
Yes,
is not a good example.
no,
I
I know.
One
I
might
know, never mind
wonder
that.
who ran the country
Right, never
during
mind.
the latter Reagan
that's
administration.
right, exactly, it wasn't Reagan.
Nancy,
Yeah.
Alexander Haig.
oh, maybe.
Woodrow
Go ahead.
Wilson's wife.
I'd like to
Yes.
suggest
That's it,
that
that's
we,
everybody.
somebody call John Hess and get a copy of Lenore's
Yeah.
statement, proposal.
I think
He must have it for his minutes, I assume if you put it in the minutes.
Yeah, she
If
turned,
not, find it.
she
Somebody has
turned
to
it
find
over to him that day, after she made the
We
statement,
need-
she
we need
handed
the
it to
language.
him. I thought
The
he-
only
Yeah.
one I saw
I
anything
think
was
I-
Jack hand something to
Yeah,
him. I didn't see in Lenore.
I think it's a dynamite idea.
She didn't hand anything.
It needs-
Well,
Ask, Ed is
All
busy,
right,
so
come
ask
on,
him.
Right.
let's hear.
hold on, everybody. Ed, did you ever speak to Bob Marshall about
Directly,
resigning?
Yes,
directly to Bob.
yeah,
And what did he
Okay.
say?
nothing came of the conversation.
Okay.
What?
I
What does that mean?
do know,
I didn't hear you, Ed, I'm sorry.
He did not respond to the conversation.
Did he, Ed, I hate to go into detail because we don't wanna hurt Bob or Molly in any
Right.
way. Did he understand?
Excuse me, we are on camera here.
Well, yeah, we
Yes,
should not discuss this.
I think a private conversation like this can be interpreted best way
Yeah.
of saying,
You're right.
it's not like he said, fill it out and
Right.
sign it, he didn't.
okay.
I think-
Let's leave
I
it,
think-
I think for the
It
record,
shouldn't be,
let's leave it
remember
there.
you're on camera, I
I
wanna
think
tell
he-
everybody
I
that,
think he
please.
truly-
Don't,
I think he truly expects to get well. And that's the hope that I think drives him and Molly. But does it mean it could be a long time coming?
That's why you
Quite
need an
possible.
interim, that's why you need an interim.
All right, David and then Stuart.
I really think that we have to explore the interim. I've served on other committees and other places of business where someone got sick for a long period of time. I was appointed to this position until this person came back to work full-time. I don't know why that can't be done, or at least explored
Of course it
anyways.
can.
It can
And I really think that's the way and the best way to solve this type of problem.
Right. Barbara, I think you proposed that.
I
the
did,
delegate.
I did.
Okay. Stuart, your comment.
I'd like to be detached and not personal about this.
Sure.
We all are.
The President of the United States can be replaced when the Vice President thinks that he is incapable of doing his job. It's very impersonal. We have to move on. The idea is that the government must function, period. That's the way it works. So under those circumstances, when a person that has been elected to office is either physically incapable of proceeding, doing his job, obviously if he passes away, or if he's intellectually incapacitated, then it behooves the rest of us to immediately respond to that issue and go ahead and get somebody to take his position.
Right.
Now, You could do it immediately by allowing or providing the president with the power to select somebody to fill in if we know that the person who is incapacitated will eventually come back. If that is not going to happen, then we have to have a process by which we get a full-time vice president who will act on the behalf of everybody. And you must step back and say, the guy's a nice guy. He can't do that. We have to be
Right.
very clinical about it
Exactly.
and set a process by which, if you're not there, if you're incapable, I'm sorry for what has happened to you, but we must replace you. We could either go ahead and tell them we're going to do that if they are viable enough to understand, but we have to move forward to fill that position with the best person available at the time. And the president could select somebody in the interim until we have the vote.
Right.
Exactly.
Or the executive board steps up and says, okay, here we have a bunch of candidates. Which one do you think, based on your awareness of this person's qualifications, will fill the slot until the election comes up?
Okay, thank you, well said.
According to what Ed just said, I would understand that Bob feels maybe one day he'll be able to come back within his term. And I don't think that we should play doctor or anything else. I think we have to honor that and respect Bob for that. But I do think that the president can appoint an interim with the approval of the officers, with the approval of the executive board, and with the approval of the delegate assembly.
Right.
And then, to me, if you have all those bodies saying, yes, we take that person takes it knowing that if Bob comes in, you did your job to help the village, you're gonna step down and let him continue his term.
Yes.
I will have that question on the wire to Rod today.
Thank you.
Good.
Wonderful.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Great,
thank you, okay.
I'll let Lenore know.
Thanks very much, Marcia.
Well, why shouldn't it be the person next in line who had the next amount of votes? Why
Barbara,
should it be someone that, that
I will
Because it doesn't-
tell you why I
doesn't say
think that, Marcia,
It's in the
because
bylaws.
some people don't run, some people do run. Let's say you have 5 candidates for vice president, and they need 2. But now because they wanna fill an interim, you're not filling the position of vice president. You only want someone who's gonna say, I'll take it until the man comes back. And if the first person got 100 votes, and the second person got 90, and the third person got 12, I don't want that person with 12 votes to be running here.
I agree with that.
I'm sorry.
We've already had the example of.
And if the delegates agree and all the officers, I don't see the
We
problem.
already had this take place a couple of years ago, if you remember, when Barbara resigned and we had to name a
Who's that?
vice president, and it was brought to the officers for a vote.
And they
And
agreed.
John Cusack
However they
was,
agreed.
they
That's-
chose because he was the next in line by the number of votes.
But they didn't have to do
But that's
that.
because it's in the bylaws, it says that in the
If you
bylaws, the
resign,
last 6
but not
months.
if you're sick, we don't have that covered.
By the way, we've changed the bylaws going
Only
forward.
says that for executive board,
Executive board
Right,
only.
exactly.
for officers of
There's
Yuko,
no
the
stipulation.
officers will select a willing candidate.
Right.
Subject to the approval of delegate
That's the way it
assembly.
should be, period.
Right,
Right,
I don't know if we just want one name, because we're picking one person and then it goes through the offices. It's not an election, but I think we should have at least one or 2 names.
Well, if somebody, if
From-
2 people
from
volunteer,
it is an election.
they have to volunteer.
who you feel are qualified.
It's
They
an
have to-
appointment, it's not an election.
Right, but
That's
I think, yeah, but
Not
what if the
Yeah.
executive board says no?
you know what the
And
problem,
what do you do?
Then you have to find someone
the
else.
problem, Herb, is if you do it that way, it is an election. We
Right.
can't avoid it, and that's not what this is about.
It's
Go
an
ahead.
appointment.
Let him point something.
In essence, Herb, it really is an election because it has to be approved by the
Exactly.
delegates. So if you present one name, if it's turned down, then you
You
go
have
to
to
another name.
find someone else. We've done that before, the delegate.
It isn't like you got
If you go up with 3 or 4 names
I
at
know,
one time,
I
you'll
know,
be coming.
unfortunately.
I hate to bring a little levity
Hold on,
into it, but-
okay, hold on, go
Not
ahead,
like
what,
a
and then
bang down
Stuart,
the door.
go ahead.
Yes, there could be controversy as to how you made that selection.
Exactly, it's got it.
alright?
Wow.
But
It's up to
the
the
term
president of the
interim
office.
appointment to me means I can sit at my desk, I can consider the willing candidates and pick one.
That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
It's an appointment.
That's
Right,
right,
and
I
they have to
agree.
accept the appointment.
Exactly, and that appointee will carry all
Right.
the authorities and responsibilities of the office for the unexpired term of the individual or until he or she returns
Yes.
in good health.
And if you remember, there's also a rule in there from the insurance department, our insurance company, agents, that they have to have a doctor's statement in order to return.
Oh, to return, yeah,
Right.
okay, that's
Okay,
pretty standard,
well-
yeah, sure.
So,
I wanna read you one more thing and then I'll come right back to you.
I wanna
Oh, go ahead.
comment, Tim.
Comment on that.
The president has a responsibility to fill an office.
Absolutely.
He is not, and we accept the idea that he is not making an arbitrary or capricious selection. He picks a person he feels that could do the job, he submits it to the executive board, but he doesn't submit it saying, I want John Jones, period. He is going to say, I want Johnny Jones because his past history has shown that he's effective in working with UCO. As a result, he presents it to the executive board. At that point, the executive board has the right to challenge the choice,
Right.
discuss it, and if they feel that the president has made the right decision or would prefer to have a second choice for the delegate assembly to deal with, they could do it at that point. We get to the delegate assembly and say, with due deliberation, we have two candidates, both have high qualifications. They are both supported by the executive board. We can have the two candidates there standing up and saying why they should be selected if you want to do that. Or to just present the names with the qualifications and then allow the delegates to do it. This way, it's somewhat removed from the president in the sense that no one could say that he picked this person for devious means. And this is what we want to make sure does not happen. And at that point, the delegate assembly has the right to speculate or look at the qualifications and make a decision.
Okay, 1 second, Marcia. If you do that, it is an election. It has to be publicized as an election. It has to go through the entire process of setting it up. Yeah, that's
Or
that's
you,
why you do it.
or it's an interim to fill the term until the election comes. Of course, you're gonna have to have a body in there.
Right,
So the process is, I think, is to provide a person who could do the job that is acceptable to the president, the vice presidents that are there, the executive board, and then pass it on to the delegate assembly. They have the final choice, they have to make the decision.
yeah.
But it's all very
You can
transparent,
say yes or no.
and that's the key
Excellent.
to the whole
Yes.
thing.
They can just say yes or no.
Yes or
They
no,
don't
and-
need a second, they don't need
Right.
a second candidate.
Right.
They
Just
just
an-
say yes or no.
Just an
Just-
appointment.
They have
is only one
they have
way.
the right to come up and comment if they want to,
In order, they'll be no.
to
Of course they
persuade.
do.
but at least we have done the right thing, and that's the key to the whole thing.
That's right. And I think if the delegate assembly doesn't vote for that candidate, then you start again.
Absolutely.
That's the way
That's-
you do it.
that's-
Absolutely.
It's not a candidate, it's an appointment.
Right, go ahead,
Yeah,
Marcia.
don't use the word
Okay, he's
candidate.
talking about the right thing, you mean the right thing? The way David had the right to take me off this committee? Is that what we're saying? That something like that's gonna happen? Think about how it happened and how it works. Just think about it.
This is-
For no reason,
Hold on,
for no reason.
Quiet.
Excuse me,
One person at a
Marcia,
time.
I just
No,
wanna
it's
say
not.
something. I don't
I
wanna go into.
want the committee to really think about this, because he took me off, he took Marilyn off, he did not take David off, so he acted the way he did, because he had the power to do it.
All right.
There was no reason. And if you wanna be fair and think about this, and really think about this in true terms.
Marcia, I just wanna say something first to you. This is not about a committee. This is going
About
through
the officers.
officers, executive board and
But it's
delegates.
giving someone the power to do these things.
No, it doesn't, it
He's the
still goes
president.
through
He does
delegates,
have the
delegates have the right to say no, am I right?
That's correct.
Yep.
So the
Right.
committee's a total different situation.
Right.
I'm trying to raise this up to a higher moral
You did.
level.
That's where it should be.
Right.
And I'm only talking about the replacement of a person for the vice presidency,
Right.
nothing else.
Right, thank you,
Right,
that's what we're,
just the
that's what we're
officer.
talking about right now.
Right,
The
that's
other
all.
stuff is debatable and I can
Right.
understand both sides and I don't
But
think
we're
it's
not
the,
talking
we're
about
not
that, we're
talking about it now.
officers
Talking about that.
replacement.
I was
I-
just giving the committee something to think about.
I understand,
Right,
point taken.
We've all thought.
I have to make another point and I'll come back to you. Page 19, under officers, current bylaws. Any vacancy in any office may be filled by appointment by the assembly. The officer appointed to such vacancy shall serve for the remainder of the term of the officer being replaced.
Thank you.
Right, so that's the way that goes, and it gets to the assembly through the process of the
The
president
process,
and the
that's right.
and the executive board and then to the executive. Now, that's current bylaws, that can stay, again, you know, Rod will look at that when he looks at Lenore's suggestion, okay? Yes,
I really believe,
I have to go back,
okay,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Marilyn.
I do know for a fact, just adding to what Marcia has said. I do know for a fact that it was given to, told and or asked, I don't know, whatever word you wanna use, that David went to Arlen and told Arlen, if, as long as you get rid of Marilyn, Marcia and all, I'm sorry, I wanna bring this up because this is what people
This is
know all.
different.
It should
Hold
be done
on.
at an officers meeting, that's where it belongs, the committees.
Yeah,
We're also talking about innuendo and gossip right now. I
Yeah,
don't
this
think
is,
it has any
this is
place to be.
really out of order for this
Right,
meeting,
exactly.
I'm sorry.
Well, I
Bring it up
just
to the
feel that
officers.
people should know and
They
we
do,
are
we-
on
we
television.
know.
Hold on a second, this has been discussed at this meeting before. It has been brought up several times.
Yes.
So we
Yeah.
need to understand that we are talking now about officers
Right.
and that's what we're talking about now. Herb,
I believe that the officers that are currently doing the job, the president and the 3 vice presidents
And the
and
secretary.
the secretary, they have the knowledge of what the job is and what it requires, and I'm sure they will come up with a qualified name. When it goes from the officers to the executive board can do whatever they deem necessary.
And then
If they
delegates.
approve or disapprove, and then it goes to the delegates, and that's where the final numbers will come out of who's gonna be.
It's either
new-
yes or no,
the new
not a
person.
matter of, if not, a
Right.
matter- it's
But
not an election.
I really believe that they know basically what the job is and
Yes.
what, I've been around a long time and I know what this job is, and it's a big job, it's not a little job. And it requires a person who wants to do this. I mean, you just don't give it to somebody who just says, okay, I'm gonna fill in for, and then sit in the outer office.
Where-
Just, you wanna have somebody that actually function at the job.
We're only talking about the people whose names are on the front board out there, nothing else.
Correct.
Right.
that's right.
That's it, and
That's
that's
it.
what
That's what it's about.
we should be limited to in this discussion. The other stuff, I don't wanna bring up now because
It's not
it's
the place,
extraneous.
right.
It
No matter
doesn't-
how emotional it is,
And it is emotional for people
Yes.
who
And
are
we-
not.
and
but I just wanna
But I-
get
but
through this because
Right.
this is very, very important. We
Okay,
have to have machinery in place to make a change or an adjustment when it has to be done so that we're not shorthanded. And that's basically what we're
Right.
doing.
and I think all the comments have been incredibly thoughtful and appropriate
Let's move on.
and at the kind of higher level that we want the discussion to be, so I thank the committee for that, yes.
I would hope that we can have an appointee by the next assembly, general
So do I.
assembly.
Mhm.
I mean,
Okay, yes.
so
Good
Are you
point,
talking about an
Jackie.
interim?
Yes.
the
Yeah.
interim
Right, good point.
appointee,
Yeah, very
I
good.
think we need a vote on the committee agreeing that an interim vice president should be named.
Make that motion.
yes, make the
Okay.
motion.
All right, Ruth, you said you wanna make the motion?
I
Go ahead.
make the motion that we have an interim person appointed as a vice president at the next delegate meeting.
I second.
by next delegate meeting, okay. And
Anita, is that really the job of this committee to make a
Yeah,
motion?
the advisory.
No,
It's an advisory.
we're an
No,
but
now it's gonna
we're doing
go
the
to
bylaws here.
Now it
Yeah.
has to go
It's
through.
the place of the officers, you have
That's
to
right,
be
you
right,
are
not
right.
us, it's the
but I
officers.
think what we are agreeing to do
It's
is
bring it to the
to
office.
bring it to
Bring it
the
to the
officers
Bring it forward.
in an official way.
We're gonna
Thank
Move
you.
it forward, maybe you wanna amend it a little bit, you know?
Yes,
No, it
No, it's all
naturally
right?
goes
Okay.
forward to whatever it has to
Okay.
go to now.
okay, so let's be clear on the language then. So the motion is that an interim VP be appointed by the next delegate meeting, and the piece added is, yes,
Or
okay.
presented to the delegates, presented
To
to
be
the,
presented to the
Yeah, presented
officers,
to
the
the-
executive board and the delegates.
yes,
Exactly
by the
Exactly the
next
way
meeting.
we were going to put it in there
Right.
Exactly.
anyway,
Right,
and this
right.
is
Confirming it.
confirming what we're doing.
But it has to be said in there somewhere, since we don't have the coverage here, it has to be said in what you're bringing forward, that until or if that person returns or until their position is up for vote. That should be
What an
put in an-
interim,
Well, some
Vice
people might not
President.
know who are
Yes, it
delegates,
should
I'm
be,
sorry.
that's right, you're right,
Right.
just
You gotta
elaborate.
just spell it out.
And I think we're talking about someone who is unable to perform his or her duties.
Well, until they come back, I
Until they
know,
come
And
yeah,
until,
that's
right,
what
and
interim is.
until and if they come back,
that's what it
okay.
is, you're
So
right.
that's what'll go,
And it's
All right.
nothing against the person who you're
We know that,
replacing.
we know that.
right,
It's
thank you.
just something that we have to do in order to function and provide the services for the people that
For the village.
depend on us.
So this motion, the motion is for this committee to forward to the officers our recommendation that we have an interim vice president named for vote by at the next delegate assembly.
I just wanna run that concept by Ron.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, sure.
Thank you, okay. So maybe the amendment, the proposal is to have it run by the attorney first.
It's fine, I view
think
this
you're right.
action as an efficiency move, over and above, I still think we should look at Lenore's,
Yeah, we're
That's for
gonna
the
come in,
bylaws, yes, for the
Yes.
bylaws.
get the language right.
right,
But
But
this,
this will,
this would be,
Now,
but this will expedite the problem,
this will be an interim appointment
right,
Right,
to solve an exigent problem.
Absolutely.
that's exactly
That's
the way to look at it.
Her proposal, as I remember it, did not discuss an interim.
No.
It was a replacement.
No, I
So-
can't back up.
So we have to look at her language, but we also have to realize that what we are recommending
yeah.
is an interim.
This is tricky
And that's
because then
important,
you wanna take an administrative action. And certainly based on incapacity is fine. To remove someone who has been elected to office, it's tricky.
you know,
Big deal.
You're bypassing the recall
We're not
process,
removing.
it's tricky.
I don't
And
think,
it's gotta be
That's why it's
run
gotta
by
go to
Ron.
Rod.
not,
Yes, but I don't think.
we're
it's-
not really, we're not
Can't
doing that,
go
what we're
on.
doing is we're
Not
putting.
I'm not talking about the interim process.
Oh, okay,
He's not being removed.
no, he's not being.
He
No.
could walk in here in a week
Right,
And he'll
yeah,
be back in his job,
out goes the
right.
interim.
right,
Exactly.
correct.
I'm talking about the thing that Lenore put in front of the
That has to
delegates.
be
And
revised.
it really has to be worked
That
carefully.
has to be replaced.
Yeah, and there is a question about whether Lenore should submit it. Well, I guess, do we consider that she submitted it at the
Well, it
meeting
is.
and that language is a
Was.
submission? Okay.
Right, right.
All right, so we're going to ask Rod to look at the proposal that Lenore made, number one.
We don't have that
No,
proposal.
no,
we don't
That
want
has
that.
to wait.
Excuse me, Anita.
The interim thing.
I could get that
Excuse me,
proposal.
Anita.
No.
Honor got up and spoke. She did not submit anything at that
Right.
meeting.
You're exactly right.
That's right,
She's right.
that's right.
No, but
She
you're
didn't give
actually-
anything
you're
to
actually
John?
working on
She
something that
presented
came
an
to light.
idea.
Oh, just an idea.
That's
to
not
the
something
delegate.
you're considering.
Right. Barbara,
Look, right now, we're only making a recommendation for this interim to the officers, okay? This is to take care of a problem that will help the village. This is not making a new bylaw or an amendment yet.
Right.
Because when you make that amendment, I think what Lenore, and I think if we talk to her, we'll change it. Because what you really need is something that if any officer gets sick or is unable to do their job, get an interim. That doesn't mean, because if they can't do their job, then you need someone, whether it be, say, Barbie, yourself, anyone. We don't know what tomorrow's gonna bring to any of us.
What she did was she made a suggestion at the
Yeah, I
at the
think
meeting.
it can be,
It could be changed,
You're fine,
I'm sure
I
she'd
agree.
be willing to go along with it as long as it's acted on. The genesis of the idea that what she was trying to propose, which we have discussed now and refined. And I'm sure that she'll go along with that, I can give her, send me an email of it.
Good,
And
okay.
but I don't think she intended for her specific language
I
to
don't
be
think so
acted
either,
on.
I
No,
agree
she
with
was
you.
making a suggestion or a proposal, and she did make it for herself, that's the thing you have to understand, she was also acting as the Wellington group, you know, because they don't have a vice president right now.
I know, but if she, how can she say she's acting for that
She can't.
if she didn't take a vote?
Yeah, she can't.
I didn't say that.
Okay, well, then
She's
how
just
can
asking for it to be considered.
She's
So,
proposing an
until-
idea to be dealt with.
Okay, I want 1 and 2, please.
It was my impression, subject to the opinion of those assembled, that she made a motion. And
I thought she made a motion.
my response was, it was out of order
Yes.
for procedural reasons. I made no comment on the validity, I think she's got the germ of an excellent idea. It's just we have to put the language together, that's our job, right?
Right,
And that should go forward.
right.
We should get what she said, modify it as necessary. But this other thing should go forward now.
Yes, I agree.
Like
Right,
action this day.
okay, right, exactly. So, Ruth,
In view of nominations from the floor February, will we be able to get this done?
We'll make sure we get it done.
Okay,
It can be done before election,
But
before
before
that,
nominations.
before
we're
nomination.
just gonna have to, no polls
Right.
at that meeting, you know, we're just gonna have to move through the pledge. Treasurer's report,
of course.
right?
The
And-
police and this vote.
Exactly.
And
You
jump
don't
right in.
even, you didn't even have to get police, cause people can come to our security meeting if you want to cut your time down, to be very honest.
Well, they kind of look for him.
I think people like to hear though, don't they?
Oh, they
They
do,
do.
they do,
Yeah.
but I'm
Voyeurs.
saying, you have a big agenda that day.
Tell them to make it short.
Yeah,
Yeah, well,
It won't take,
can't-
it won't take long.
But you can't make it short,
I think
there's a
it's
lot of
something that
robberies
everyone's
on the
understanding.
table.
yeah, 1 at a time, please, yes.
Okay, I think this here, what we're moving on is to rectify, like I told you, a situation. But I think at the delegate assembly, you have in here amendments that you want to go to
Right,
Rod. And I think that amendment has to be added on to these here. Or we can add it on to the bylaw before you send it, if approved by this committee.
Either way.
You have to
just so
decide,
that
but you can't just give them anybody the right to do an amendment because others had to go and do it the right way, unless this
That's
committee
right.
makes the amendment. It would be discriminatory.
Well, that's all I suggested
Yeah.
to Lenore, that she present that to advisors.
And that's what she has to do,
And it'll go through the
and we
process.
can help.
now if we get her language in, we can write it, which is, the language is very
It
simple.
would have to be a vote right here though.
And we'd have to have a vote, we'd have to have an emergency meeting,
take
Yeah,
a vote.
that's all,
um,
before the ten.
okay.
Can't we do our own right now here? I
We
mean,
can.
Can we work on the
Yeah,
laws?
I was thinking we
But why
would.
can't we, as a group, the
can.
advisory group, bring it
Yes,
forward
we can
now,
absolutely.
our own language?
And
Yeah,
I
the
sure can do that.
Right, and
Okay.
instead of delaying it,
I'll
we
bring
can-
her own
Okay.
language.
We have a motion on the table.
Mhm.
Do we want to vote on it or do we want to
Yes,
withdraw it for now? Okay. The motion right now, and Ruth, correct me if I have you wrong now with all this discussion, is that the advisory committee asks the officers committee to appoint an interim vice president before the
The next
nominations
meeting.
committee meeting
To be approved by the
to
executive
be
board.
approved by the executive board.
And the delegates.
Can we get that done? I mean,
I think that
Maya,
should be done right away.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. That sounds like that.
yes, please.
Okay,
Just do that.
what occurred is she brought up an issue that she thought was important enough that she brought it up to the delegates. We today tried to solve that particular position, which we've done. Now, the bylaw is something that we're gonna do
Separate,
at a separate,
right.
that's how you gotta look at it.
Right,
Let's move this forward, this
Okay.
vote,
Right, exactly.
and then
before-
work on the bylaw, like I
Right.
said.
Okay, let's,
the advisory committee asks the officers committee, now is it the officers committee that appoints or the president?
the
We ask the
President.
Well,
president.
he is the officers committee too, he's not,
Yeah,
I
yes.
know.
Ask,
I
but
think
it's gonna
we
go
should-
through the officers,
CEO.
I'm asking you.
Yeah.
The advisory committee asks the president
It actually is a
to
committee.
appoint an interim vice president before February 2, which is the nominations
Delegate
committee, and to have it approved by the,
That day,
Next
The
meeting of
officers
the
committee.
delegate assembly.
delegate assembly meeting.
Next
but
meeting.
including the approval of the officers of the
Whole process.
executive board and to the delegate assembly.
Can
Now,
you read,
does that mean that this vote comes up before nominations?
Yes,
yes.
yes, it should.
First thing.
can you read that again,
it's separate,
Anita?
you're right, it's a
Yeah.
separate.
Anita, read it
Yes,
again.
okay, I don't know if I can, but I will, yes.
That will not preclude someone nominating for the open
That's right.
positions.
Right,
Just remember,
No, they can't, they
just
can't.
remember in background, this is an elected person who has not resigned. You cannot nominate someone to fill
that's right,
a slot that's filled.
that's right. We can't,
Nobody can put anybody up for Bob's job.
Right.
This is just an interim person
This is an
that they
appointment.
can't
appoint,
nominate.
thank you, I keep remembering
They
that.
can't
That's-
Until the
that's a
term of
very
the
important
his
point.
office is over.
Go ahead,
I would
you
like
want me
you
to
to,
read it again?
want you to read it
If
again,
I,
please.
and I'll probably screw up something else, but the advisory committee asks the UCO president to appoint an interim vice president and to have it approved.
Excuse me, shouldn't it be with the approval of the officers?
No.
Yes, that's in there,
She's gonna
go
say
ahead,
that.
Oh,
go ahead,
Once
David.
again, if you say the president, just like Stuart says, now you're saying it should be addressed to the officers committee.
Correct.
Everybody knows who is in charge of the officers committee, but it should still be addressed to the committee.
Normally,
right,
the
the committee's gotta
language
be
is,
put in there,
the president shall appoint John Doe with the advice and consent
that's it, with
of the
same word,
officers committee.
advice and
That's
consent,
it.
That's
Thank you,
Now you got it,
that's the right wording.
advice and consent
of the office.
of the officers committee, honest to God.
And then it goes
And
through
then it goes
procedure.
to executive board and the delegates.
Delegates.
Yes, of
That's it.
course.
And this will happen by February 2nd,
Before nomination.
before
And
nominations.
we had to have, thanks, we had to have that in there, so it looks like it's,
The,
You're right.
not looks like it, it's.
But that's the
because
right way to
that's
put
the
it,
way
you're
that-
right,
that's the
David.
way that it's done.
okay. The advisory committee asked the president to appoint an interim vice president with the advice and consent of the officers committee and to move it through the process of approval by the executive board and delegates by the February 2nd delegate meeting at which nominations from the floor shall be conducted.
Yes.
Somebody talked about nominations from the floor, this is not,
No,
No,
we're
no,
not having nominations
No,
from the
this is
floor.
an appointment, Jackie.
Right.
in the same day.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I mean for
Would
this
be well
particular
after
motion,
That is not
after
an
this,
open
That's why
slot.
you get it done first and get it over with.
That's not an open
Somebody
slot,
talked about
somebody's there,
This will engender a great deal
And
of
then you know
discussion,
what's open.
maybe.
given the key item on the agenda.
Believe we didn't
well, why don't you do a time limit?
On the agenda, reappointment,
Yeah.
Yeah.
appointment.
Because we have
we
other things.
We can say, as we are introducing the nominations, just to be clear, an interim vice president has been named 5 minutes ago and
Voted on.
and
Yeah.
voted on, and therefore no new appointments for beyond the 2 open slots
That's
will be
automatic.
considered.
That's automatic, you didn't have
Yeah.
to say
That's
that.
automatic.
Well, I
It's not
think
up for
you do
election.
with
Maybe
this
you
group.
write check,
You have to do it.
Whatever.
whatever, you'll do it.
Shall we take a vote?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Oh my
Yes, I
gosh,
second
okay,
that.
see notes for the motion. David Israel,
Yes,
Ed Black,
Yes.
Joy Vestal,
Yes,
Stuart Richland,
Yes.
John Hess. Oh, he's not here, he's the recording secretary. Bobby Levin, sorry. Barbara Cornish,
Yes.
Jackie Carlin.
Yes,
Herb
Yes.
Finkelstein, David Boaz.
Yes.
Ruth Dries.
Yes,
George Patel.
yes.
Joyce Reese is
unanimous.
no longer, okay, yes, it is a unanimous vote.
Choice.
Phew,
Joy.
Joy, I named her,
what's that?
I
Did
asked
they
her,
call you?
Yeah.
Yeah, she
I
called
called
her.
her,
And she put you as a yes.
and I put you as a yes
She
anyway.
read your mind.
No, I did call her,
I'm
I
kidding,
wouldn't,
I'm
thank you, I wouldn't do that. Okay, now we have one last thing, which is another item that came up.
Proposal.
And that is a proposal by Ruth and you should make it.
Proposal.
Was it by me? Yeah, I guess it
You- it
was.
was.
Okay. The proposal was for the new bylaws, not right now because it's in effect, that 2 members of a family should not be elected to a position at the same time, or word it the way you want,
The same position.
the same position. Of course, I
Any
haven't,
position, we
any
should do.
position, any
Whoa.
position.
Any position,
All right, so,
Officers are also executive. board.
offices
Every-
only.
no, no,
Oh,
no, we're
everyone,
talking
executive board?
Yeah.
everything,
it should be
everybody,
everything.
No, it's a subtle
different.
difference. Executive board members are not considered officers of you.
Right, they're
So,
the
You wanna get
board,
the language the way you want it.
but we would want it, we want it for the board primarily because we have a situation right now, which
Yeah.
will go ahead because it's legal.
Right.
It may
is
not
legal.
be ethical, but it's
Right.
legal
Yeah.
and that vote will go ahead. But for future, we don't want it to happen. And that's a proposal.
So you don't want anybody in the same family.
Right.
To
in
run for the
either-
same
to run-
position.
no, to
Oh,
run
no.
for any position of an officer
A voting.
or
voting-
executive board.
A voting body.
At the same time?
But a committee is a voting body, you can't use that.
No,
No.
hey,
But
Go ahead.
2 people, in the instance you're talking about, are not running at the same time.
They all-
One person has another
That's
year and
right,
the other
right,
one,
that's right.
Doesn't matter, but
I
they
don't know
will
if
be,
that covers that.
they'll be in office at the same time right now.
Well, maybe you have to say that anybody even in office.
Yeah, something like that.
In other words,
I think you have to say
If
something more.
you are in office and I'm your spouse or sister or whatever, and you're already a vice president, I'm gonna run for one that's
Well,
open.
that's what's happening.
But it's not written, you're not writing it
But let's
right.
not worry about the language for a minute, let's talk about whether we really
Let's
wanna
talk
vote for
about the
this.
concept.
I do want to raise the legality and that there's a reason that it's legal and we don't have to abide by that.
Right, that's
but
what
I-
we're talking about, we don't
Right.
want to abide by that.
Right, okay,
A new bylaw. Because I have to say something, I don't know about anybody else's building, I'm only a 16 unit, and we have 5 people on the board. We never have a husband and wife on the board unless nobody
No,
else is
right.
running, then we take them. And sometimes we say, we'll take you because we need 5 on the board, but you might not have a vote. But here, it shouldn't be because,
Different.
and I know I hate to do this because Stu is sitting here, he's a great guy, and so is his wife, but it's not ethical, and I think that's why you're bringing it up, and I agree with you 100%.
And I'm not the only one.
I know, there's a lot of people feel that way.
comment,
You've seen Rod's opinion, that there's no illegality here.
that's right, that's why I
There's
read.
no violation.
Because it's not in our
But
bylaws.
now,
If we put in our bylaws,
you're
it
saying
wouldn't.
something else. Remember, we're FS 617. If you say to relatives, husband, wife, sister, brother, you both cannot occupy a position in this corporation governance because you're married or you are
Related.
related, you may not be able to get away with that.
Well, you have to run it pass
So let's-
Rod as a
let's-
new
Exactly.
bylaw.
Let's
This may be
do that.
discriminatory
Right.
If you can't, you
based on
can't.
a protected class
Then
element,
we're
I don't
spinning
know,
our wheels for nothing.
I don't know.
Well, you gotta ask.
I think
I'm
we
gonna
should
ask, I didn't ask that question,
Yeah, you didn't ask if it was made into a bylaw,
right,
if then it's acceptable.
right. I don't know what would happen at AT&T or IBM or
I know.
Intel,
Cause there's a lot of people related.
if that
Yes.
happened,
But they don't, if they're not governed by bylaws, if it doesn't state in your bylaw, then it's not covered.
right,
We have a president who
Alright.
appointed his son-in-law, his daughter, and other sons
And
to
the whole
perform
family.
as chief
Yeah, why don't you
advisors.
put?
And that was legal, maybe not ethical, but it was legal.
Right.
So,
no, it's not that
Advise-
it's UCO.
Mm.
It's a Florida FS 617 corporation. And
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of other rules that apply.
That 617 corporation rules apply, but we also apply by UCO bylaws.
If they don't violate state law.
Well, that's what you have to find out,
Right.
before you even do it,
right,
that's what you have to find out from Rod again.
right,
All right.
right, go ahead, Herb.
talking about the president, but those are advisors, they don't have votes. I personally think that the executive board can go along and have husband and wife.
I believe.
I think when you're talking about the officers, you're talking about 4 vice presidents and a president. And
two
and
secretaries.
two secretaries,
And a treasurer.
And a
And a
treasurer,
treasurer.
That's
right.
8 people, yeah.
8 people. That's a very close-knit group. And I think that's where
Yeah.
That's
I
where
agree.
the problem is, and because you're voting in the same time on an issue. Executive board, you've got 20 people, you could have husband and wife, it doesn't matter. It's not as vivid, and it goes to the delegates, it really doesn't matter at all. But in the officers, I think husband and wife, it does matter in the future. We can't change what's now, but we should look at it for
Well,
the
that's what they're
future.
looking, she's looking at.
But it should be the officers only, I think.
Behind you.
Yes.
Can I say something?
Of course.
Alright, I'm sitting back here, so maybe I should stand up.
That's
No,
Because,
no,
I
no,
wanna
I
stand up for
understand.
this, I wanna stand up for this because I want it to be very clear. Because I'm married, I do not give up my rights, I do not give up my right to run for office or to vote. So therefore, I think that this whole thing is out of line, I'm very sorry, maybe ethically, you can agree that it is, but legally, I don't think you'd have a leg to stand on. Because as I said, when I became a married person, or if I'm a sister or a brother of somebody, I should not have to give up my right to run for office. I may be directly opposed to what the other person is saying.
Sure.
And therefore, I think this whole discussion is really, I think that if Ron even got this, he'd throw it out the window the
I
minute
think
he
it has
got
to
it.
go to him.
Absolutely.
That's a very, very solid point, go ahead.
I just wanna make an observation because it's, we're talking about Phyllis. I would say that, and I'm not tooting anybody's horn, I'm being very objective and clinical about this because I've done this before.
You better be very careful.
My attitude,
You're on TV.
yeah, that doesn't make any difference, I'm talking to the people in this committee.
Sure.
My objective here is to get the best people in UCO, period. A person who has 18 years of experience working with people in every area of Century Village should not be denied the opportunity where we can tap into that person's ability and knowledge to be used for the best purposes of Century Village. Phyllis is an independent person, and we have had more arguments about ideas where we disagree rather than we agree. But I've always stepped back, and this is, in all discussions and everything else, this is your particular position. If we agree, fine. If we don't, it doesn't make any difference. And she is a very strong person who has very strong ideas, and she will present it. And it has nothing to do with me. We are two independent people within the same household. We have the same kids, but we don't always have the same ideas. And my attitude is that her attitude towards the job is to do the best she can for the people in Century Village, period, regardless of what I say and what I do. That's where I stand on that. And
Okay.
anybody else, you know her, so you can make it, whether it's morally right or wrong, that's a matter of your own personal feeling.
That's what I was
and
gonna
that's
say,
it.
your own opinion.
But I'm talking about very practical reasons for having the best people on the job.
I think we need, I guess what we're saying is it's not going to come down to the legality. You want to consider it on different grounds, but we have to be very careful, not
Rod will be able to
not
tell you
consider the legality. Go ahead, one more comment or somebody else, then I'm gonna make a motion to send this to Rod and be done with it.
It may be what you're looking for. It's the protected class issue and it's a familial status. You cannot discriminate against anyone based on familial status, i.e. husband, wife, brother, sister, consanguinity status. And I don't know as Rod will chop on a bylaw that says you can't do it. You can't have a married couple on the UCO Officers Committee.
Like a,
There were certain rules under 718, and you touched on how many units you had and how many candidates you have. It was typically prohibited.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay, and I thought it was prohibited based on nothing. Because you look at any given couple, they don't necessarily vote as a block.
no.
amen.
Quite the contrary, right? So, I don't think Rod's gonna go for this, but I'll send it, obviously.
I just wanna say, I'll just tell you one thing. I happen to like Phyllis and I think the world of Stu. But I don't think I'd want Stu or Phyllis as a vice president, the other one as a one as a president and vice president. I wouldn't want Trump and his wife as president and vice president, that's for damn sure. So I mean, ethics does come into play here, and you gotta look at the person. As far as the job they can do, that's another story what you brought up, but ethical, when Frank was in here and they asked me to run, I said, no, I couldn't do it, because I don't think it would be ethical for me to run while he was a vice president. But that's up to the individual, how you feel in yourself, you have to decide that, and they will at election.
Yes, they will, Marcia.
In the end, the delegates will decide.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying,
like
at
how they
election,
feel.
that's right.
And that'll be the answer, how they feel about it, that's
Exactly.
all. I mean, it's not a secret, they know and they'll
Yeah,
decide.
right.
Okay.
Very well
But
spoken.
it's going to the world.
All right, so we are agreeing, I don't even know if we need a vote, but we're agreeing to send this to Rod.
Right, just
And
go
to
and see
ask-
what he says.
Right, and we're gonna have a legal opinion, and we have to ask him if making it a bylaw
You might,
supersedes the law.
you might want, no, you can't supersede state law.
Okay,
You don't need a
Then what are we
lawyer to
talking
tell you
about?
that, but you ought to put some language on paper.
Yeah, that language, yeah.
Right.
okay. All right, good enough, then so let me just say, we've agreed to send to Rod. Do we have other comments? Okay, we've agreed to send to Rod. I wanna make a list, just help me, of everything we are sending to Rod. Did you make a list, David? I have it in my notes, but they're scrambled because I've been trying to,
I've got
The
the
bylaws,
current set of modified bylaws.
the vetted stuff.
The question on appointment of interim VP,
Give that to her.
and now this latest issue on familial
That's not for
status,
you.
husband, wife, for example,
He wants to look at it.
petition.
being
They have to be on there.
on the officers committee or executive board.
right,
She's got it.
petition.
Vetted petition.
right.
Petitions.
You got anything else?
We have the
This is
vetted
for the
petitions now, are we adding anything to those before we send them to Rod? Are we sending any of these to Rod?
You can't
Send
add
them.
it until you get Rod's approval.
Oh, okay.
And then you can do whatever you want at the end.
So what about Lenore's? I am going to,
Yeah,
Joy
well,
is gonna get us
The language.
the language.
But I don't think
Yeah,
we can
that's
send
whatever.
that language, because we didn't hear it.
Right.
Exactly.
You
So
got-
until
I thought
we
we
hear
made
it,
up our own
you can't,
language.
that's what I thought we were gonna do.
We'll do that next, we will do
Oh,
that.
we're gonna do
That's the
it,
next thing we're gonna do.
alright.
So we will send the interim VP language to Rod, which we'll do right now if people
I
want
thought we were
to
gonna.
stay a few more minutes to do it.
Yeah.
And then that will be it for one day.
Let's get it done.
Okay,
No, interim, right.
the wait a minute, and we're asking the interim VP language to get there before the
I'm just
second.
gonna present that as a question.
No, wait a minute.
This isn't a bylaw change.
That's separate.
That's separate.
You're just asking him if you can do it legally, and if you can, then it will go through the process and get done. But you still have to get a bylaw to cover that in the future.
Okay.
Correct.
So in the event that an officer is unable to perform his or her duties
For the balance of his term.
as vice president of
No, you
we're
have to
talking
officer.
okay, any officer, okay, so it is
As an
his
officer.
duties for the completion of his or her term. Now, they obviously they can resign, but we know that, so we don't include
No.
that.
The president
Then the
may
president
appoint.
will name,
With the advice and consent of the president.
right, thank you, will name an interim VP with the advice, thank you, with the advice and consent
The officers,
of the officers.
then go to
Executive
executive
board.
board.
And subject to confirmation by executive board and delegate assembly.
Right.
Okay. Okay, and then that doesn't get into the messy stuff, you know, right? Okay, we've got George and then David, please.
You said VP.
No, she changed it to
No,
officer.
Yes, officers.
Officers.
You're not limiting it to the VP.
No, any
Just
officer.
the officers.
She put officer,
That,
she
and I'll
changed
say
it.
any officer
Because we have two officers
Oh.
that are outside of
for
this.
3 months.
She could have a problem
3
and we
months?
would like to replace them also.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
and another
Yeah.
officer,
Yeah.
right.
Hold on one second, are we saying for 3 months? Is unable to perform his
This
duties,
sounds like you jumped into Lenore's
No,
No,
this
no.
is separate.
bylaw.
but
This
shouldn't
is
the
separate.
bylaw say? I mean, if they're unable to perform their duties for what, 1 day?
No.
They're in the
No.
hospital?
No, 3 months,
3
like she
months.
said at
Yeah.
least.
Okay.
3 months is a fair amount.
Yeah, that gives you enough time to know whether you're.
3 months,
Would have to be 3 consecutive
Incapacitated
months.
for
3 consecutive months.
during his or her term.
Right.
I'm coming to you, Marilyn, in a minute, I just wanna get this, what we have. In the event that any officer is unable to perform his or her duties for 3 consecutive months, then the president will name an interim officer with the advice and consent of the officers' committee, subject to confirmation by the executive board and the delegate assembly.
The
That's
officers
including
that are
right now,
elected
we haven't got a
know this
treasurer.
and accept it.
So that would
And
mean
so if
for a
it happens-
treasurer also.
That's right.
Well,
It's a
yeah,
fait
but
accompli.
Hold on.
Wait a minute, that, he passed away unfortunately, and the officers did make an interim treasurer.
No, they didn't.
No, they didn't.
No.
Well, he's
No.
helping.
He's
Well,
just
helping as a
But
vice
he's not
president.
as a treasurer.
helping, he's not named as a treasurer.
No, he's not the treasurer, but I'm saying he's
Acting
acting.
in the
That's an
position.
interim, but
That's
you
an
can't
interim.
He's
He has no
overseeing,
title.
overseeing,
he's overseeing a paid CPA.
it's overseeing, he couldn't be an interim
your
because
point-
he's an officer.
Right.
Your point
And
is
he's
well
not-
taken,
He's
and
not
nobody has been beating down the door
To do it.
to
Nobody
take that
came to
job.
offer it, nobody came up to the plate and said,
That's
I
right.
will fill that position that Howard's gone, nobody. So he is just,
Overseeing.
But
He is doing what we asked him
He's
to do
overseeing
because
what
we
the
need,
officers asked
the
him to
someone
do.
do
position
it, that's
filled.
right.
That's all.
and that's it. If we didn't, we would be in deep trouble.
Right, and that's due to the passing of the treasurer.
But now
It's
you'll
not-
get a
It's
new
not something
treasurer.
with a
And nobody's
sickness, it's
stepping up to
different.
the plate to say, I'll take his
Right,
place in the
so-
interim. Well, we could have dealt with that and that's it.
And you have no
That's right.
choice.
And we
That's
asked
right.
people, they didn't
It
wanna
was-
do it.
It was mentioned at delegate assembly by David,
Several months,
Many times.
thank you,
What?
That's exactly
several
right.
months it was mentioned.
yes.
Right,
You know, that word,
what, go ahead.
a appointee,
Mm.
you just can't sit here and
No,
say,
they gotta
oh,
be willing, of
You're
course.
right.
so.
Go ahead and then I have a
Let
question.
George's first.
George, go ahead.
Are we willing to accept 3 months as a minimum before we take
I
action?
think you couldn't put any less than that,
Yes,
George,
you
you wouldn't be
can.
right.
But if you have a person in a condition that medically it's perfectly certain that it's gonna be more than 3 months.
Nothing's certain in
Nothing
this
is certain.
world. Bob is hoping that he'll be back, and with the help of God, he will be. So 3 months is a fair amount, it really is.
Okay,
You raised a good question, which is if somebody dies.
That's
No.
another
That's
question.
different. Another
What
question.
did you do?
No,
That-
yeah.
What did you do at the time when a president died in here?
What
What
did we
happened?
do?
What did you do with a
Hold on.
treasurer?
The same thing as
Our
any
treasurer,
officer. The officers committee finds a willing and qualified replacement
Right,
and
that's in the
appoints
bylaws.
that person subject to ultimately delegate assembly.
They couldn't find someone for treasurer, that was the problem.
Right.
Nobody
So
wanted to
you
be
were
it.
stuck.
So they did the best they could.
Just 1 second, David, then I'm gonna come to you. What we are saying is that the president will name an interim officer with the advice and consent.
Yes.
Now, that does not cover the president. I mean, the process will be the same, but it will be do we have to specify?
Well, you would have to put,
can't wait
if it's the
3 months
president's
for a
position, it'll
president.
be up to the officers.
Right.
Somebody would have to
It's in
take his
there.
place if something
Okay.
happened to him.
Look at the current,
I read
it
it.
is in there,
Yeah, for the office.
not our
It's in
modified
there.
stuff.
It's in there.
There's a
No, I
way,
read you the existing bylaws,
there's
it's
a
not in there.
way, to do the same thing. There's a way to
The officers will vote
replace-
for someone to
right.
replace him
replace the president.
until an election.
I don't think that happened last time. I think a vice president or two
Right, that's
became
in the bylaws.
Yeah,
became
but-
co-presidents.
But that had to be approved. I don't think that was approved that way so well, if I recall.
I don't know, I wasn't here at the time. I don't know what was done, but that's what happened.
Question
Okay,
for-
go ahead, Marilyn.
Alright, but isn't it in our bylaws now that the next person in line would
No,
become?
only the executive board,
That's
they
It's
said.
the executive board.
That's only
Executive
executive
Only
board.
the executive board.
Hold on.
In a building where you're selecting people to be on the board and the president is the president and you have other people, one of the questions that you ask people, are you willing to accept the job of president if that opens up because the current president can't serve? If that person is reluctant to do it, then you're gonna have to look for somebody else because you're on the board because you wanna serve. The same thing here, if the president, for whatever reason, is incapable of serving,
You
then
can't wait 3
it's
months.
implied in for the vice presidents to select one of their own for an interim to run the
Right.
place until
Till
the
election.
election,
Right.
And
right?
that's what happened.
And of course, you can get another opinion, but
Right.
But no,
at
you're
least
right.
you're moving it forward, you're
Right.
not, you're
Right.
not running around with a chicken without, a yucca without a head.
So, go
There's
ahead.
a number of little time bombs
Yeah, there are.
in the current bylaws, and if you work down through the layers, you get the language that a special election shall be called,
Right,
and that should have been done.
right.
What-
However, if no one is willing to step up as a candidate,
Gotta take what
what's
you
the
got.
point?
That's right.
That's right. So are we assuming that when the president names a candidate or an interim VP, it is a willing,
There's been a discussion.
Yeah,
and it's
of
a
course.
willing person, or you wouldn't
Of course.
name that person?
And I'm sure you would have gone to that person and say, listen, if we put your name
Right.
forward, are you gonna do this? If they say no, then they wouldn't put
Then you
their name
won't put,
forward.
that's right.
And you move on
Makes
to
sense.
candidate number 2.
Exactly.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, maybe that's why it should be the person who had the next amount of votes, because that would be the people's choice. And isn't that important, the people's choice?
The people's choice will be a delegate assembly, Marcia, not on a vote, because you have three names,
It is the
they're putting one
it's the
name.
delegates that voted, and that would be the people's choice.
Not if only 3 ran,
But it's
they
going,
have no choice.
right, no.
Unless,
I just wanna read, yeah, Go ahead.
the person that was next in line is an outstanding candidate,
Right, thank you.
and that would be the determination.
That's very subjective though.
experience.
It's
Don't you think?
subjective, yeah, I know, and I'm saying,
You're better
but
off
I just wanna
again, it
read
kills
by
two birds with one
vacancy
stone.
by vice presidents. And this is the current, meaning the old bylaws,
Current.
whichever you,
Current.
and we didn't change this, so in the event that a vacancy is in the event of a vacancy in the office of vice president and less than 4 months remain until the completion of the term, the remaining officers may determine that the vacancy shall remain unfilled until the regular election is held. They don't name anybody. And so not naming a replacement for Bob Marshall is covered.
No, he's got a year to run.
He's got a year in front of him.
Past
it's
March.
gonna be
Oh, sorry,
6
right.
months.
And
Oh, I'm sorry,
and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
why you
And
need
he's already
interim.
6 months into it.
Interim
I'm
is very
sorry,
important.
yes.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
You know,
why
we have all over the place about vacancies
Oh, yeah.
and
Instead of
resignations
under one
for
place,
executive
yeah.
But not
board
the
and
officers.
officers and, you know, it's, we might take, or Rod may take one like last look and say, let's get it all together. Yes and yes, go ahead, David Boaz.
First of all, an observation, the person that does come in third, whatever the vote count, that doesn't mean that person is automatically gonna be precluded from consideration.
That's right, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That
Now-
goes to your point, Stuart.
And the next thing I'd like you to do, because I have a couple of questions about how the wording is in that,
Sure, let's do it.
unless you wanna take somebody else's questions first.
Do you have an important comment first?
Not terribly important.
We'll make it and then we'll go to David's point.
It's been mentioned here. It's delta is not unimportant. If the first and second number of votes is whatever, 90, 100, I think was your example, and the third is 12, give me a break. However,
Could be the
if it
relative.
was 190 and 87, well, yes, that third candidate would certainly be a candidate for
Exactly.
Right,
appointment
That's an option.
and approval.
Right.
Because you've got a reasonable number of votes
Right,
behind that
right.
candidate.
Right, and I think we don't need to get that granular in the bylaws.
No.
I think we've got enough so that the officers and the president, whoever they may be, understand what they have to do and should do.
But didn't we say that in the current bylaws, it does not say that that's the way an appointee is appointed?
Only for executive board.
Right,
Doesn't
so I
say that.
think we need to quote the current bylaws
Yeah.
when this comes up
So
at the
people know.
delegate assembly.
People know.
Great.
That was strictly for the executive.
Now, the interesting thing about that, Jackie, and I just wanna make sure we're all clear. The current bylaws are the basis for the changes that we made, so they exist in this document.
Yeah.
They are, there's no underlining and no cross through.
Yeah, we know.
So, okay, so,
She knows that, she just wants the
You-
people
I
to
Yeah,
just
you
want,
see how
there's
that
gonna be
explained.
discussion at the delegate
Explain.
assembly, why can't it be the third person or the person that got the
Oh,
next
okay.
vote?
Only
And I
applicable
think we
to
need to have
executive board.
people will talk about
Just
this.
so you can quote that bylaw.
So I'm just saying,
Quote
quote the
the
Thank you.
bylaw.
Good point.
That's all, it's a very good
That's
point.
what we'll do at the
That takes it
delegate.
out of subjectivity.
Okay, we got it. Yes,
If you wanna make that change across the board, and I'm not negative on it, you do need a formula to decide,
No, we're not doing that.
because there's a difference
We're
between
not doing that,
No, I'm not saying
between
that.
70 away
no,
and 3
No,
away.
no, no, no.
No, you
yeah,
can't.
I'm not saying that,
We're
I'm
not
just
doing
saying that in
We're not-
different
no.
sections,
Alright.
we have resignation, we've got removal, we've got whatever. We might, not changing the content,
Right.
but changing the order might happen. I mean, we had no idea of this until this issue came up, so we'll consider that.
It's a new situation.
Now, David, the language, you wanna,
I'd like
the
you to
language.
read that again.
okay. I hope I got it straight, okay.
I'm sure you do.
In the event that any officer is unable to perform his or her duties for a period of 3 consecutive months, then the president will name an interim officer with the advice and consent of the officers, subject to confirmation by the executive board and the delegate assembly. In the event that that a president is unable to serve, then the officers will name an interim president
Next election.
until the next election. Well, they can name it again,
But they'll have to have an election.
They'll have to have an election.
Okay.
But they're talking about in the interim.
We're
Interim means-
unexpired term.
Yeah, but they might poll, God forbid something happen, David, and you have to have a vote. You can vote. I mean, he's got, let's say, 2 years in front of him. Then what? You're not gonna vote for a new president?
No, you have to.
we're
that's
saying
what
the
I said.
You have
officers,
to get somebody
Immediately.
in there just as an interim until
Interim
the
until,
vote for the
until the
delegates.
election.
Aren't you
Have
going
somebody
back to
sign
the
the
fact of
checks.
whether they resigned or not?
Oh, we didn't even bring that up.
Well,
We didn't bring that
a
up.
resignation's different, we wouldn't have a problem with this if we had a
It's
resignation.
public.
Right,
It's
right.
public.
Yeah,
But
resignation.
they're only talking about if there's an emergency situation where you have to name an
That's right, emergency
Okay,
appointment.
you're not talking about just getting them
No.
out of office because.
No.
No,
No,
that's
no.
a recall, that's altogether
That's
different.
different.
Right, so you're talking about an emergency situation
Right.
where you're naming an interim.
Appointing an interim,
Right,
right.
whatever it is, health, mental, physical, or whatever,
Whatever.
it's a different situation.
And we did not say
Okay,
until the next election, is that your point?
well, it should be to fill the unexpired term,
Sure.
somewhere it should be in there, but I have two other things about,
Sure.
questions about that. Is that the 3-month rule, say for instance, say Stuart's the vice president, he says, well, I have to go have hip surgery and I'm gonna be out for 6 months. Can he not say, instead of waiting 3 months, he say, I'm not gonna be around for 6 months. Let's have an,
course,
let's
he
have
could
an
do that.
interim.
However, small point,
Really.
hip surgery probably wouldn't preclude you from
No.
participating in your
It
role.
doesn't-
Regardless, but it
If
could
you had head surgery, then you have a problem, right?
But it
Go ahead, but
could
it's
be
a point,
something,
yeah,
you
go
know.
ahead.
My point is, sometimes maybe we don't wanna wait the whole 3 months because the person knows I'm not gonna be available for a certain amount of time. So, a small point.
Well, you could put down where you wrote in there about waiting 3 months, you could put, unless the officer,
Has resigned or.
No,
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 resign,
no,
unless
no.
the officer asks to have an interim from day
Replacement,
one
right.
replacement,
Say-
it's
say-
up to the officer.
Say they have to go take care of their mother or something like that, and they're gonna be out of commission for a while or something like that. And something just for that case.
Okay,
And the next point I wanna go to, and I'm going back to my old real estate days, where you're saying about the executive, with the confirmation of the executive board and the delegate assembly? Does that mean that the executive board can stop it from going to the delegate assembly?
no,
No,
Because when you put end in there,
No, because
no,
delegate assembly has no power.
the executive board, you mean?
the
Yeah.
executive board. The executive board can
I mean
say,
the executive board.
Yeah, I know,
the
I know.
officers say,
but
this
you're
person, the
saying-
executive board can say no. And when you go to the delegates, you tell them, the officers voted this way, the executive
Right,
voted
right.
this way, and now this is
And
what
make
we're
a
no,
decision.
Herb, when you're saying confirmation by the executive board and the delegate assembly,
That's a
that
different,
means
that's.
either one of them can say it doesn't go through.
No,
That's a-
No.
I think the
shouldn't be
language
that
is,
way.
no,
I
it
think the
shouldn't be that
language
way
is
because
wrong,
the
you're right.
executive board
I
goes.
understand that,
agree.
but that language
Alright.
leads to
Term would be
that.
Subject
affirmation.
to
No,
the
you're right,
votes,
you're right.
subject to the vote of the executive board.
Subject to consideration by the executive board and confirmation by the delegate assembly.
go.
Yes,
There you
that's
go.
good.
Okay,
You
great,
put- If you didn't leave, yeah, thank you, David, you had to put something in there to make it go
good,
through. I know that from saying, from
That's a very
writing
good point,
leases
David.
to people, two different names, and I put Madam X and Madam Y, and all of a sudden Madam X walks out, and Madam Y only pays half the rent because, listen, it's an N. That's why I always put or.
yes, okay, okay.
Right.
Yes,
It's been my understanding that the executive board only makes recommendation.
right,
It's not that the executive board has to agree, but
Right.
they're making a recommendation for or against. It's not that they have to agree.
Right.
It's gotta go through the procedures.
unless there's no quorum at the delegate assembly.
Right.
And then
Then the
the
executive
executive board vote,
Prevails.
you know.
Prevails.
Whoa, that's kind of tough in placement of people,
It's
but
just,
go ahead.
it's just wording, it might be nothing, but
Well, you know
No,
what,
no,
maybe we're
Go on.
belaboring it, and we need to get it to Rod,
right.
That's what I think you should do
Alright.
first.
hold on,
One
yes, thank
other
you.
small point, you wanna put something in there about determination of the appointment upon the healthy return of the incapacitated person,
Yeah, that's good.
right?
But isn't that what an interim does, like if
That's-
the person
that's what
comes
interim
back,
means,
then they're
doesn't
just.
it?
Yes, it really is.
But you
But
know what?
someone who has been interimly appointed may develop an acquisitive nature, and here comes so-and-so back healthy and well with his doctor's note.
Yeah, then
Well,
that's it.
This interim appointee has to say bye-bye.
Yes.
Of course, that's
That's what
understandable
it
for an
was
interim.
about.
I think it should,
applied.
I have a
Yeah,
feeling it
word.
should be noted, I have a feeling it should be noted upon a healthy return, because there'll somebody stand up and say, we have an interim until the next election
Right.
or the
No,
unexpired term,
Right, yeah.
so
put
if
it
he
in.
comes
I see
back,
what you're saying,
see what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
I
might
think
be
we
a
need
good
that
idea.
language, thank you,
Put
yeah.
it in.
Anybody else?
I don't think they
I'll
will.
type this up and email it to you and to
Thank
the
you.
entire committee, just in case I
don't
got
have
it
this
wrong.
memorized, David?
Do we have anything else?
Do
we have anything else?
Too smart. So people don't appreciate it.
Touche.
Oh, we have to send it to her. We'll send it to Lenore. Yeah, yes, that's a good point.
Whoa,
No?
now that's a different amendment.
No, but
No.
wait,
No.
No, we're not
Oh,
doing
that's
that.
right.
But the language that we're
Talking
doing
about
now.
something.
Oh, okay, fine.
You
That's
can
right.
send it for her, but this is being done by the advisory board,
Yeah.
not by Lenore.
No,
This is something-
no, nobody's saying that.
Hey.
No, no, that's what
Nobody
they're
is saying that.
That
If
was
you want this ready for delegate assembly, this has to go now.
I'm gonna
Right.
send it to you this, right when I go
Okay.
home,
Today,
today.
Action this day.
Post haste.
Is that all of we, is that
I
good
know.
for the committee today?
Yes, you can go if you want.
I have to go to a doctor, so.
Go ahead,
that's
Okay.
important.
all right.
Find out about the
Shall we
Have a
make an
good
interim
appointment.
appointment for her?
Yes, we'll give you, yes,
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
all right. I think we're done. Does anybody have anything else right now?
I
Motion
have
to
one
adjourn.
minor thing while
Yes.
you're typing up language.
Yeah,
Wait,
I hate to bring it up in light of the important things you're discussing.
What page?
Page 17 at the bottom, it says the UCO election, two-term upon installation in the office. In the installation of offices in
What
the
page are you
office. Page 17
What
at
letter?
the bottom.
That,
A?
yeah, that's, you
It's
know why
never
that's there?
been in the office.
No, but I'll tell you why that's there. Let's say, for some reason, you didn't have this installation luncheon.
Right.
They still have to be installed, and what if somebody, and this happened on executive board, I think in one officer, they didn't attend the installation.
Many
They had to
times,
be installed
many
here
times.
in
There
the
were several.
office, cause
There
they
were
have to
several.
know, right?
There
That's
were several
correct.
at the last executive
That's
board.
exactly what
Yeah.
happened.
listen to Bobby for a minute.
Why
Listen,
can't it
hold
just
on.
say upon installation? Why does it have to specifically
No
say
later than
a
the second
a
Sunday.
location?
It is kind of
I mean,
confusing.
it's minor, but you're
So who determines the installation is the
The
question.
critical component of the installation
They're not
is not the luncheon and the dance, it's the oath.
It's
Right,
the oath of
right,
office, that's right.
So why can't it just say upon installation? Why does it have to say a specific location?
Because it's done in this office, if they don't attend the installation, that's why.
But it's
But
still the
that's
installation. She's got a good point. What we say, installation in the office no later than the second Sunday after the first Monday following the
really
election. Do we need that?
Yes.
It's a good, we
You
do
do
need it,
need it.
okay.
I just don't think you need in
David,
the office.
tell Bobby why, because she raises a good point. Why do we need upon the
Well,
first,
you have a vote on a
Because-
Friday,
yeah,
so you're approximately 2 weeks. Well, do you really want somebody to come in? Or maybe the person has something planned for that weekend already.
Whatever, yeah.
So all you're actually giving them is 2 extra days. But it could be easily done.
This is critically important, this is typical transition of power issues. And the newly elected person
Could walk right in.
has every reasonable expectation of taking up their office. and it has to be spelled out, and there cannot be undue delay.
Okay.
I have no problem with the time frame. I just don't understand why we have to say
What's the
installation in the office. Why do you have to make
Where
a
else is
specific
gonna be?
location?
Where else would you
Well,
do
we're
it?
having it on the ship this
No, but if the person
If the
doesn't
person's not
attend
there.
that, that's what that's for, if they don't
So
attend.
they
Slow
either
down, slow down for a minute, because we wanna really hear her.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just, as I read it, I don't see the point of making the location specific upon installation.
And this, all this says is upon installation in the office.
What, but we
Oh,
never
then
have
why
it
don't
in
you
the
list
office.
them?
We have,
Oh,
we
no,
have.
it's installation in the office.
In the office
officer.
upon which they are about to embark.
Oh, alright, then
That's
I'm
what they
reading
mean,
it.
yeah.
Oh.
The key component is the taking of the oath.
That's right.
Do we say in the elected office? Do we have to say that?
Alright, I misread,
No,
I
it
misread
doesn't, it's implied that if they're not
It's
there,
implied.
then they
Good
come to
point,
the
Bobby.
office and say, I do, and then that's it. Of course, that happened before.
Are you
It's
comfortable
happened
now with that? Are you okay, good?
Perfectly happy. Typically, it's trickier than you think as to who can issue oaths,
Yeah, I was gonna
who
answer.
can administer oaths. Not anybody and his brother can administer oaths, they have to be officers of the court.
Notary.
A
And in
notary
fact-
can,
A notary.
a
A
notary.
notary.
A notary can issue certain oaths,
Yeah.
that is correct, and probably could marry you.
They
They
can,
do,
They
and
can.
have, I know.
Actually,
Not in
we'll have a
Pennsylvania.
judge there to
No.
administer
Yeah.
the oath.
But
Depends.
we also have had a notary come in here and install the officers that did not attend the party.
That's
happened
right,
2
that's
years
what I'm
ago.
saying, I
And
remember
Ron
that.
was the one
Yes.
that did it.
Yes.
Right.
Because these people chose not to go to the celebration for the dietary reasons or the day or
Whatever the reason, there's some
Somebody
people
had
don't
to
go.
come.
Do we have to
Yeah.
specify
They could have
that?
something.
I don't, do we have to specify that?
I don't think you have to
No.
change
I'm
anything.
sorry I brought it up, I
No,
I
no,
misread it.
No, it's
It was a good point, Bobby,
And guess what,
but I think we're
delegates,
gonna leave it.
Bobby, delegates are gonna bring it up, maybe, so we have an answer.
Yeah.
You know, we always are very close to the line of when we are saying too much, you know, where when it's leave it to
Less
the
is better
committees, leave it to the
sometimes.
officers, leave it to the executive board,
Yeah.
okay,
Less is better.
okay.
The only reason I brought this thing up about the second, because then you have a definite date that it's going to happen every
Right.
time.
Yeah,
And that's what they do.
yeah, I think
I
that's
mean,
a,
it
that's a
could be
good
done
point.
sooner if it's wished upon or whatever, but there's no confusion as about to when the person would take office.
Right. Very, very good. And Bobby, every discussion that we have is worth it.
Because you learn something.
We learn something and we
We learn.
confirm things, so, and we clarify, so I think it's great. Thank you for that. Okay, do we have, I don't have a date yet for the next meeting, it'll be the
Yes, you do.
second Tuesday, is it in the,
Got it on the first page of the,
did I do it? Okay, thank you.
We're not here
The
tomorrow,
ninth.
Bob? And Enid, we're not here again tomorrow?
We're not here again
The
tomorrow,
ninth.
February sixth,
I
Thank
thought,
you.
wait a minute, I thought I had.
is it February sixth?
Well, maybe it's just six.
Yeah, on the
Six.
bottom you have it.
February
Yeah.
sixth, thank
I
you,
got it.
thank you, I'm more
Six.
prepared than I thought.
And I hope it doesn't conflict with
Next meeting, February sixth at 10 o'clock.
the reporter and
Thank you.
no, it wouldn't. That's a Tuesday, it wouldn't conflict.
Well, we have a question for you. No, this is when you
Do
were
we
in.
have a motion to adjourn? Barbara, and a second.
No discussion on the adjournment?
No, if you were not at
We
the
wanna
delegate
reconsider.
assembly.
She always does.
How are you gonna know?
That you have to come in and sign.
Because it's been in the
Oh my
letter.
gosh.
Are we adjourned?
And I
We
have
are
given a
adjourned.
packet of
Thank you.
these to
Do you have
everyone.
any of those extra slips
You know what?
for
The
the
executive board,
These-
In other words,
Oh,
Lori
yes.
has them and everything.
10 members.
Oh, for George, I thought you said.
I,
If they
no,
don't come to
I
the
have
action,
one.
I
they
haven't
Bobby's
given
here,
it to,
yeah.
I've given
Let
Laura
me
the
see, I
one
have to have one.
They should be, because they have to take an oath of office.
That's exactly right.
No,